I now reconvene to the regular meeting of the Board of Education at 7 o'clock p.m. with Cruz, Na, Orozco, and Fikes present. Before we begin, please silence all electronic devices and note that these proceedings are being recorded. Pat.
The board met. The board.
Are we not on?
The board met in closed session from 4:04 p.m. to 6:38 p.m. regarding conference with legal counsel existing and anticipated litigation, student discipline, public employee discipline dismissal release, and conference with labor negotiators, agency designated representatives Sylvia Orozco and James Na, unrepresented employee, new superintendent Dr. Norm Enfield. No action was taken that requires public disclosure.
Leading the Pledge of Allegiance tonight is Lytle Elementary School student Nishka Singh. Next are string students from Lytle Elementary School with their teacher Karen Kuhn. Let's give them a warm welcome. People from Lytle, I would like to say I was at your school at Christmas time, so I got to hear your orchestra at Christmas time. Big improvement. And I think I told the teacher this before, there's a special place in heaven for beginning music teachers. Dr. Enfield, I believe you'll be introducing the next presentation.
Thank you, President Fikes. On behalf of Mr. Joseph tonight, I have the privilege and the excitement to introduce the Teaching and Learning Task Force and the Professional Development Committee. But as a reminder, I want to go back. This is 4 years now that we've been presenting to the board. And 4 years ago, when Common Core came out, there was a lot of initiatives that we were looking at implementing. And to take a look at all those initiatives, the Teaching and Learning Task Force was created so that we could reduce down the number of initiatives in our district and try to bring a narrow focus. And so that was 4 years ago, and I'm sitting here and I go, wow, it's been 4 years that we first started and brought this work to the district. And so tonight we're going to share with you about the areas of emphasis and the professional development that the two committees work on together. And so with that, I'm going to introduce Grace Lee, the Director of Professional Development.
Thank you, Dr. Enfield. So we have some tech help, so it's our presentation is showing on the screen. It was working just a minute ago.
Hit the power button. And then once it starts up, hit the cog. There's like a little wheel.
Yeah. Madam President, members of the board, we are delighted to have our Teaching and Learning Task Force and our Professional Development Committee members here with us in the audience, and they'll be sharing with you that, as Dr. Enfield referenced, this is our 4th annual update to the board, so we've been providing an update since 2015. They're going to be sharing with you on 5 themes throughout today. The first theme would be, what are their contributions to their work, in particular to the system? Second one is that our Teaching and Learning Task Force members really strongly believe that our most valuable resource are our people, and therefore, how do we engage our own stakeholders and our own people in our work? Third, we also want to learn from what's going well. And from what's going well, not only people that are doing the work, but people that are influenced by the work. We're hearing from our stakeholders, and they're giving us feedback. And we don't want to rest on our laurels too soon. So the biggest room is the room for improvement, and we're going to be sharing with you some lessons that have been learned the past 4 years, and finally, how those lessons learned are leading to our next steps. To provide an orientation of what they'll be speaking about, you're going to be hearing about 3 different systems in place that are represented by these shapes. The first system you're going to be hearing about by the Pentagon is the work of the Teaching and Learning Task Force with the area of emphasis. And the Teaching and Learning Task Force really lays the foundational work because they're looking at so many data points to develop what's called the AOEs. And the data points that we're looking at are our SBAC and CASP data, our dashboard, which are the many different colors and the status and change report that you've been updated on. And lastly, how we leverage the work so that our systems are working within the LCAP 8 priorities. After you hear from the Teaching and Learning Task Force, you're going to see the Professional Development Committee and them speaking about the district PD that's aligned and related to the work from the AOE. And then lastly, We're going to see how this is all impacted at the site and cite data along with anecdotals on how this work is impacted at the school site level. You're going to hear this word over and over, feedback. That's represented by these yellow arrows. John Hattie, researcher in education, most recently defined feedback as one of those instructional tools that can leverage our student learning 2 times faster than the speed of regular learning. So you're going to hear our multiple presenters here talk about feedback, and the 3 different feedback loops that they're going to be speaking about is that a teacher at the site level will have one, the closest level of feedback would be to their principal and instructional leadership team. Another level of feedback that you're going to be hearing about is when the teachers provide feedback to the PD committee on the district overall PD. And then the 3rd level would be how they are helping us determine what our focus should be for next year in terms of area of emphasis. With that, Dr. Enfield shared with us, and Mr. Joseph, thank you for the vision of 21st century education and for empowering us to do this kind of work. I remember when we first began this work, the charge was, Grace, the district office should not be doing this, the decision-making all on its own. We should be involving our stakeholders. So really, the work of the Teaching and Learning Task Force, as Dr. Enfield described, was initiative fatigue, and to alleviate initiative fatigue, which would be very commonly known as teacher and administrator burnout. The other avenue that the Teaching and Learning Task Force was trying to address was clarity to all staff on the focus areas. What are our focus areas? And I think one of the things that we struggle with the most at the Teaching and Learning Task Force is this question not of what we do, but of organized abandonment of what we don't do so we can make space for the things that we're doing. You'll see many of our members here speaking with you shortly. Then we have the work of the PD committee, and the PD committee is trying to coalesce multiple stakeholder input. So often you'll hear teachers and administrators say, Grace, we need real PD in our district. But when they define real PD, we've often found that they're defining it in very different terms. So the PD committee is taking all of those opinions and formulating a recommendation for what's the best type of learning for our teachers. One of the greatest charge for our PD committee is the 21st century learning, because if our teachers are committed to providing 21st century learning to our digital natives, then how in our system are we providing that type of learning opportunity for our teachers? Our PD committee, you're going to see, is also represented by multiple stakeholders. So you will be hearing perspectives from teachers, from site administrators, both at the elementary and secondary level. You'll be hearing perspectives from people who are experts in science and history, ELA and math. And you may hear diverging thoughts as well, because that's one of the beauties of our work, is that we may not all think alike, but at the end of the day, we're coming together in the spirit of collaboration to further our student education in our district. So with that being said, our first member that I'd like to introduce is our ACT Vice President, Mr. Kelly Larned. He has been in the groundworks with our work since 2015 and has been a real champion in listening to the teachers and also a voice of reason in a very diplomatic way on how the district should move forward. So I'm going to hand it over to Mr. Larned.
Thank you very much. Good evening. Before I jump into what is an area of emphasis, I wanted to draw your attention to some other educational research by another gentleman named Doug Reeves. And when we're looking at Doug Reeves' research, he identifies 3 key resources in education. One is time, one is money, and one is emotional energy. Time and money are often fixed. We know what they're going to be. We can look at budgets, and we only have a certain amount of time. When it comes to emotional energy, there's a little bit of an ebb and a flow, right? There's a high and a low, and his research has pointed to that emotional energy, when it's low, what happens is we often face antagonism and we often face frustration. And he ties that into this idea of initiative fatigue, right? And in his research, he has found that after 6 high priority initiatives have been implemented, the number of initiatives are inversely proportional to student achievement and student success. In other words, as the initiatives go up, student success and achievement go down. He says that it's impossible to monitor and implement more than 6 of these initiatives at a time. And if you try, what happens is we face that antagonism and we face that frustration. So as a teaching and learning task force, what we've done is we've identified these areas of emphasis. We've said, let's focus in, let's hone in on specific areas of emphasis that tell us what students should know and what they can do. And then as a result, what we can do is we can take the teachers, we can take the site administrators, district personnel, and we can laser focus in on those areas of emphasis. This may look a little familiar. I was at the board meeting where Mr. Joseph and Dr. Enfield presented this model where we put students at the top and we reversed it, right? Students became our top priority, what we focused on. And the Teaching and Learning Task Force has embraced that. We've taken it to heart. And what we've done is we said, students, you're our top priority. We're going to identify these areas of things you need to know. And then we're going to identify the roles that teachers, site administration, and staff, support staff, that the district office, even Mr. Joseph and the cabinet, and then the Board of Education, the roles that they'll play in rolling out these areas of emphasis. So, last year was our second year of the first round of areas of emphasis. And a few that I want to point out would be one of the 4 C's is critical thinking. We also addressed ELA Shift 1 and 2 last year. Math S&P, which stands for the Standards for Mathematical Practice. I hope I got that right? Not a math teacher, but 1, 3, and 6. And then in science was a focus at the secondary level with NGSS, and that was a transition phase moving towards NGSS. And then in history, secondary teachers as well, the historical investigations. There were others, PBIS, digital tools that have been, but the ones that we've really focused on are those high academic ones at the top there to start off with. For this year, we changed to a new set. After 2 years of doing that first round, we moved to a new set. We added another C, collaboration. The team also moved to ELA Shift 3, a focus on that last shift. With Math S&Ps, we added 3 more, 2, 7, and 8. In NGSS, we added a component for elementary teachers. And it's actually to allow them to become aware and explore the NGSS standards. And then with secondary, we moved from transition to actually implementing. So asking secondary science teachers to start developing learning sequences around NGSS. And still with history stayed the same. And with that, I would like to introduce Denise Delorier. She is our special ed, our district special ed instructional coach for elementary.
Thanks, Kelly. I represent all the elementary schools for special education in the district, and I'm an instructional coach for each and every one of these schools. Are you clicking, Grace? Thank you. In our Teaching and Learning Task Force survey of teachers and administrators, we started off in 2015 with about 20% engagement. And then this number grew in 2016 to 30%. In 2017, we were at about 50% of our teachers and administrators responding to our survey. And in 2018, we continued to engage about 50% of our teachers and administrators in our work. This means in some of the results that my colleagues will share in a few minutes, we are listening and learning to approximately 600 teachers' feedback. The Teaching and Learning Task Force has developed these areas of emphasis starting in 2014-15 school year with input from the stakeholders. There was input sought in May and June of 2015 during the development of these areas of emphasis. Teachers were asked for input through such questions as, is this area of emphasis clear? Are you ready to transition to another area of emphasis? If not, what are the supports that you need? We continue to ask these questions and seek input like this every year for the development of our areas of emphasis. In early 2018, no, go back. Oh yeah, you're good, thank you. In early 2018, the Teaching and Learning Task Force engaged our colleagues again, and we asked for input. 271 elementary teachers and 216 secondary teachers participated in the survey. This equates to roughly 50% of the teachers. They were asked a series of questions to gauge the level of implementation and were referred to these definitions to define their progress. So you see, level 1 is the lowest, the exploration and research phase, and it progresses through to level 5, which is the highest, the full implementation and sustainability phase. Good. On this slide of feedback from the teachers at the elementary level, the last column, highlighted in blue, shows how many of us are at the highest level of implementation, which are level 4, full implementation, and level 5, full implementation and sustainability. So when the Teaching and Learning Task Force analyzed this data, we understood that in some areas, such as English language arts and math at the elementary level, we may need less support. The teachers may need less support next year. However, looking at the science at level 1, which is still the exploration stage, and level 2, the beginning development, indicates more of a need for support for the elementary teachers next year. So now I'd like to reintroduce my colleague, Kelly Learned.
So I have more numbers for you. After getting information and feedback back from the secondary teachers, you can see that when we look at levels 4 and 5, remember level 4 being full implementation and 5 being full implementation with sustainability, we can see with regards to ELA and ELD that we have 60%, 39% of full implementation, right? Math, we're up there 61 as well. When we get to science and history, just to point out, those are a little bit lower, but I did want to point out that those are still relatively new with regards to the curriculum that's out there. In fact, science in particular, the framework is less than a year old since it's being released, and they're still working on curriculum guides and curriculum to even be put out there, right? And I know history is still in the early stages as well. So I'm not going to read through the rest of the numbers, but I did want to point out these are teachers that are self-reporting where they feel they're at with the current standards that they have. And with that, I get the privilege of introducing Tom Mackesy, who is principal at Country Springs and the president-elect of CHAMP.
All right, so I get to talk a little bit about how the elementary administrators perceive the same kind of thing. When you're looking at these slides, again, level 4 and 5 are the ones that the most implemented areas. So if you're looking at it and you see English language arts and ELD and math have been implemented, we feel, the elementary principals feel, have been implemented to the highest degree. And that makes sense. It lines up with what the elementary teachers feel like. And it also lines up with the fact that we have adopted the new textbooks in all those three areas. And so it also, if you look at science, it again is our lowest. So we look at that and we say, well, we're still in the exploratory stages of science, and we are also just kind of getting our feet wet. We've actually done some, there's PD going on right now this month for the teachers to start jumping into the NGSS, and that's really exciting. The teachers are getting very excited about that, and so that is really the next step. It kind of goes back to what Kelly said, referencing Doug Reeves, that you don't want to do too many things at once, and if we had done all these things at the exact same time and tried to push ahead with our NGSS, probably our ELA and our math may have suffered a lot. So now we've got pretty strong with our ELA, ELD, and math, and now we can move forward to our science, our NGSS. Same thing with the secondary. Again, I think Kelly said it probably better than I would, and that is that you're looking at the same kind of things. The new curriculum in NGSS is not quite there. World history is getting new stuff this next year, I think it is. And then, but our ELA and our math, and look at our PE. PE is doing really well. All those areas, this is what the high school, or the secondary, the secondary principals and administrators, how they reported, and it looks very, very similar to the same kind of reporting that the teachers did. So I think that we're looking at the same thing when we go through classrooms, and we're looking at the same thing and thinking the same thing as the teachers do. So I think that we've aligned. This is separately done, but it aligns pretty well with each other. So. And with that, I'm going to throw it back into the studio to Grace. I feel like we're one of those TV shows or something. You know?
Thanks, Tom. My colleagues did such an amazing job sharing with you the input scale, 1 being the lowest and high being the 5. So we heard two different facets of the diamond, teacher perspective input, our site administrator perspective and input. And now our LCAP 8 state priorities, one of the priorities is number 2, implementation of state standards, and it asks the district for their perspective. So we'll be sharing with you briefly that first, because the district is a support, they're asking us how we would rate ourselves in terms of the support that we're providing in these different areas. The first area mirrors how our teachers reflected their implementation of state standards in terms of professional learning. 4s being in the areas that we've concentrated on the most, ELA and math, and then that next level of work, NGSS and history being a level 3. And now for the other facets, I'm handing it over to my colleague, Mr. Luke Hackney.
I'm going to share a little bit about where we are reporting for our instructional materials. And again, this is K-12 when we're looking at where our rankings fall. So if you look here, English Language Arts, and we're using the same scale of 1 through 5. However, the descriptors are changed very, very lightly to match what we're going over. So when we're looking at ELA, we've adopted K-6. We have a brand new adoption that we're using this year. Our 7th and 8th grade is currently going through an adoption for ELA, and Dr. Rodriguez will be sharing more about that. English language development and mathematics we have adopted, but we're not a 5 yet because we haven't had our programs long enough to start a continuous evaluation cycle. And as you've heard from former speakers, NGSS, Next Generation Science Standards, and our History Social Science have newer standards that have come out. So we are at a 2, but we're looking forward, and we have a plan for moving those over as we continue to go on. The next piece that we are reporting on are our district's policies and programs that will support staff in identifying areas where they can improve in delivering instruction that is aligned to our current and recently adopted standards that we're using. There are some examples up there of collaborative time, focused classroom walkthroughs, and or teacher pairing are just some examples. If you'll look on this, you will see the rankings here do mirror what we've seen previously. English Language Arts, those Common Core standards have been out a little bit longer than most of the other standards that we're beginning to implement. So we're at a 4. English language development, we're at a 5 because we're looking at what supports we have in place. Our English language development instructional coaches out of our Office of Access and Equity have already created a systematic approach of how they are supporting our teachers who teach English language development K-12. And they are using data to support schools that need that support. And not only are they providing the support and letting the teachers have an opportunity to implement procedures and instructional practices that are going to increase student achievement, they circle back around later in the year to follow up to say what worked, what didn't work, how can I continue to support you. So we really have a great model going on for English language development at this time. Again, you'll see the same pattern coming. Mathematics, science, and history social science. We do have policies and programs in place, but we have a plan of how we're going to strengthen those. But as we're self-reflecting and reporting at this time, we are at a level 3 for those. I'm going to have Dr. Rodriguez come up and talk about the next piece in our self-reporting.
Thank you. So I know you see a lot of the same words on the left-hand column, but let me point out that what we're talking about now is once we have professional learning in place, once we have the instructional materials in place, once the policies and programs are in place, what in our self-reflection, where do we figure out where we're at in standards implementation altogether? So this is really kind of a summary of everything, everything all at once. And so as you can see, and again, it's been reiterated again and again, we're going to be looking at 10 standards specifically, starting from the top to the bottom here: ELA, ELD, mathematics, NGSS, and history and social science. So the culmination of all of that other material, how are we doing in terms of implementing each of the following academic standards adopted by the State Board of Education? These are the overall results. And I'm glad I don't have to read a bunch of numbers, but we have check marks there. Now, you may not have seen these, too many of these core indicators yet. And each one of these areas does reflect just a different implementation time. Some of the standards are actually that are in place right now are from 2001. The framework's a little bit newer, meaning the vehicle by which we deliver it. But for example, visual and performing arts, you're talking 1998, where the framework is just being developed right now. Career technical education, a little bit higher, 2013. Health education content, 2008, I believe. And so this is where in this self-reflection tool we've indicated the level of standard implementation. I think that's it.
And now we're going to touch upon this theme, what's going well, really briefly. A real big shout out to our colleagues, because some of the themes of what's going well that you're going to be hearing from is not the people that are doing the work. It's very easy for us to toot our own horns, but the data that they're going to be sharing with you is actually from the end user. So part of the feedback process in design or anything creative is how are you getting input from not the person who built it, but the person that's using it. So that will be the lens of our next part of data and presentation. So for what is going well, I'd first like to introduce Mr. Larry Casillas. He's our science professional development representative from Townsend. He has the perfect attendance award for our committee in the past 4 years. He has not missed a day, and I imagine his classroom is like that as well. Mr. Casillas.
As you can see, two-way communication and collaborative work, it's been touched on earlier by the earlier speakers. The Learning Task Force and the Professional Development Committee, it's about working together, getting the teachers and administration in the district to work together like this. That's what's going to make this thing successful. And what's going well is the two-way communication. And like I said, the speakers that have come up previously have alluded to that. What we strive for in our communication is feedback. And that's something that we've looked at in the Professional Development Committee. we're not quite there yet. We're not quite at where we want to be at that 100% level. We're getting there, and that's something we're looking at, how to get more participation from the end users, as Grace said. That's what we're striving for. We regularly look at the surveys that have been presented and submitted, and we try to brainstorm and come up with better ways to get that participation. So we are working there. We're not quite at where we want to be, that 100%, but you're going to see the numbers do look promising. They do look promising, and it's all because of this collaboration that we have. I'd like to introduce Aaron. Oh.
Good evening. Another highlight and what is going well is that during our professional development days, more teachers are providing us feedback on the day's learning. The PD committee, the past couple of years, have developed and refined a PD evaluation tool that is being used in our district. The evaluation tool asks questions such as, were the learning outcomes met? Were our teachers able to implement what was at the PD right away? Was the teacher's needs addressed? Was the PD clear and well organized? And finally, did the PD encourage participation and collaboration? One of the first PDs we had this year in the 2017-18 school year was our training for our new elementary ELA adoption Wonders curriculum. In our elementary ELA PD on Wonders, as high as 449 teachers noted that this PD was clear and well organized. 440 teachers agreed that the learning outcomes were met. 432 teachers felt that what was presented could be implemented right away in their classroom. 431 teachers felt it addressed their needs. And finally, 397 teachers felt that they were encouraged to participate and collaborate during this PD. Some of the reasons why teachers may agree that this PD was clear and well organized could be because they were ready to dive into this curriculum with open arms. They just needed additional learning and input from the publisher and our district. In turn, these teachers felt that they could in fact take what was presented and implement right away in their classrooms because most Wonder resources are online. It's right at their fingertips. Possible reasons why my colleagues may disagree or strongly disagree are because Wonders is overwhelming. Teachers are trying to wrap their heads around our new Common Core ELA curriculum. So in turn, this PD might not have helped some teachers because either they were not ready to dive in or weren't in the mindset yet. It is overwhelming because it does have so many online components and resources. However, teachers that I have talked to this year agree that it is better to have too many resources and components than not enough. I believe as the years continue, teachers, like always, will fine-tune this curriculum to meet their students' needs and will find Wonders not to be so overwhelming. And now I will turn it over to my colleague, Tony Herr. She is an instructional coach at Levi Dickey.
Thank you, Erin. Good evening. So I'm going to look at the math professional development with you. And the elementary math professional development was really a historical moment for the district, as evidenced by the teacher surveys. And I want to start with some of these numbers. If you'll look at those, it's pretty amazing. When we look at meeting the learning outcome at the math professional development, we have take these off now, 379 teachers in the agree and strongly agree category. And then when we look at teachers are able to implement the materials and the learning that they had that day, being able to implement it right away, 373 teachers agreed. When we ask if it addressed the teachers' needs, what they needed for their classroom and their students, we have 370 teachers, and these are all right around 370, almost all of the participants. Was the professional development clear and well organized? We have 379 teachers, again, agreeing in that category. And did it encourage participation and collaboration? Again, 375. And I think that category, encouraging participation and collaboration, Grace Lee, professional development, listened to teachers when they said we have to collaborate at these professional developments. We can't just hear all of this and go back and implement it without time to talk to our teams. And so Grace has wisely, at almost every professional development, added that time at the end for them to collaborate with their peers. All right, so these quotes here, these are from the teachers. They also have a chance on their survey to turn it over and answer in their own words what the development meant to them. So if you look at that first sentence, 69 times teachers wrote something along this line: deeper understanding of the math standards for mathematical practice 2, 7, and 8, and the strategies to teach them to our students was what they valued. That's a lot of teachers saying a similar comment. The next one, 171 teachers said we loved the number talks and the dot talks to get students to think about math. And if I can explain those really quickly, when I played cards and dominoes with my grandmother, I learned to look at that group of numbers and know right away that's 5. You know, whether it had 5 dots in a certain place. That's called subitizing, and that was what the teachers were taught. There are ways to use these dot cards with your kindergarten and first graders to teach them to just know that that right there shows 6 and that shows 2. Everyone understand that? So, and then the number talks, once the primary kids understand that subitizing, then we went on to looking at number sentences. And so for second grade, you might put a number sentence up, 23 plus 58, and you do it horizontally, and the students have to think. There's think time in there. Think about your solution. And then in the number talk, they hear each other talking, and this can take 15 minutes to half an hour. They're talking about how they did it in their head, and you never know until you see these students do it how many ways there are to do those number sentences. Some of them add the tens first, and they have to explain it. They can't say, I added the 2 and the 5. 2 what? 2 tens and 5 what? 5 tens. And the teacher has a job there of writing down what the student says and writing the student's name. So this is a procedure that goes along with the math. It's a supplement to our curriculum. And it's wonderful. The math practices are to get students to think about their thinking and how they're thinking about their math. And that works. So 171 comments on that. And then 45 times teachers said, thank you for the great PD. I thoroughly enjoyed this professional development. I learned lots. So something like that. We even had one teacher at one of the professional development said, this is the best professional development I've ever been to in Chino Valley Unified. And that kind of warms your heart, that they really liked this professional development. So teachers have learned to use our instructional materials as a guide and a resource in teaching the standards. Every lesson may not be taught when students have already mastered a topic. So as the teacher goes along in math and they do the pretest, the students might already have mastered this topic and they might skip it and go on. And so we've got a student testimonial here about after a math professional development, this is what a 5th grader in our district said. My math teacher is skipping lessons and explaining them more descriptively. We learn how to plot ordered pairs and connect them to make polygons. Then we skipped a lesson and went on to a lesson that had plotting. So if the teacher sees the students are going to better understand this in a different order, they're doing that. And students were interviewed right after the math professional development to see what they noticed in the classroom. Last year we focused on math practices 1, 3, and 6. And this year we started focusing additionally on math standards 2, 7, and 8. And here's what one student noticed after a math professional development that her teacher had attended. In math, I noticed that our teacher has been showing us more than one way to solve a problem. She tells us to use the strategy we're most comfortable with. For example, when she was teaching about multiplying fractions, she taught us how to solve the problem the way it's shown in the book, and then she showed us how to cross multiply. She told us to try both ways and to use the strategy we thought worked best for us. And that's so Common Core right there, is to have the students use what works for them and not have to ask the teacher all the time, how do I solve this? They should know or have their best strategy for solving math problems. And at this time, I'd like to introduce Alexis King. And Alexis was the recent winner of the Millikan Award, and she also teaches English at Ayala High School.
I'm going to talk briefly just about our secondary ELA professional development and what's gone well with our secondary ELA teachers. As you can see from the screen, we had 76 of our secondary ELA teachers respond in our last professional development survey. This year we focused really on emphasis 3, which was shifting into that content-rich nonfiction and how we can use that within our classrooms, within our language arts classrooms where fiction has been such a driving force. It was really beneficial. We had one in the fall, we've had one in the spring, and at each of those professional development meetings, Sue Beers came in and spoke with our English teachers on different elements of these shifts in our curriculum. It was brought up at our fall professional development that one of the needs was that we are English teachers, and the bane of English teachers is grading those essays, and that we would like some professional development and some help on how we could better grade those essays and use our time with our students more efficiently and not just have the pile at our desks. And so at our last development meeting, Sue Beers addressed those needs, and she said, here are some ways that you can make that grading process more efficient. You can have that time with your students back from just kind of handing them the paper and then never seeing it again. And I think that's one of the reasons that so many people within our cohort agreed or strongly agreed with our different learning outcomes and things that we could implement right away, because she addressed the needs of our staff. One of the recommendations that she made was all about how to use grading as a means to have students interacting with their writing. And so no longer do we just, at our site, write on the papers, hand them back, and then watch them disappear into the backpack, never to be seen again. Instead, we leave them. Sue taught us we put check marks where there are areas of need in their writing, and then we spend time the next, when they get those papers back, having them dive into their own learning and saying, here's what I need to improve on, versus just having our notes on their paper. So that came out of that professional development. And at our site, that has changed the way that we use our grading practices, and it's changed the way the students are interacting and engaging with their writing. At Ayala, we've been lucky enough to transition from our district PD to site PD. So to follow up each of the district PD days, we have a site PD day, which I think has changed our department enormously. We are far more collaborative. We spend time with each other planning so that we are more on the same page with the other teachers in that grade level. We are far more normed 9th through 12th grade, what our expectation is for each student at each level. So taking what we've learned at our district PDs and then being able to assign it to our site and what serves our students better has been hugely important on our campus and creating a really cohesive department. Some of the things that you can notice from this chart is that not that many people disagreed, and so we really count that as work that's being well done there. Again, just as was pointed out before, some of the things that were repeated in the PD notes was this idea of concrete classroom strategies, and that's one thing that Sue Beers does so well, is she doesn't just come in and give us these big overarching ideas, but she says, here's how you could use this in your classroom tomorrow. And I think that that's something that in secondary we don't always get in professional development, and that's been so beneficial this year for us. And then again, like I said, it came up that we needed more help with grading and assessing, and that was implemented right away, in the same school year. So it's been a really beneficial thing for not just our site, but all of the sites. And I think that it's been, as you can tell from the numbers and the comments, something that the English teachers have really appreciated having the opportunity to attend. And from here, I'm going to throw it over to Adam Scholl, who's the math department chair from Ayala High School.
A little bit different height, that's okay. So you'll notice we had a very similar reaction response from our math colleagues as we did with our English colleagues. Overwhelming positive responses. What we really liked this year, I think what is driving part of this is the granularity. We used to have math professional development for all of math, and I think it was a very smart decision this year to have Math 1 teachers meet separately, Math 2 teachers meet separately, Math 3 teachers meet separately, to have things presented in a more specific way. One thing the teachers, I think they got so much out of these, we were put into basically the role of the student to feel, okay, here's what these strategies feel like. I'm sure we've all been in math classes, and you can imagine what that looks like, right? You just looking at me and listening to me. And Isn't that what people imagine? Anyway, so we're in the role of these students doing these collaborative activities, seeing the way, oh, if I'm teaching math with these new standards for mathematical practice, what does that feel like? And the teachers felt, based on that, oh, I see how I can incorporate that back into my own math classroom rather than, as Ms. King said with the English, we're no longer getting these broad ideas about the way things should be taught, but a lot more specifics. But even so, teachers are looking for that next step. And also, I'll just keep going, because we do the same thing at Ayala. We have separate Math 1 professional development just at Ayala, following up these professional developments through the district. And at those, we have vertical articulation. So we also have a day where all of the math teachers are working together. Hey, what do you need out of Math 1? What do you need out of Math 2? I have a few things here. What else do we have? The teachers were excited to have activities that could go directly back to their classroom. And there were also activities that could be modified so it's not just this one exact thing that we got from the professional development. Yeah. So again, overwhelmingly positive responses. They just really liked the activities. They wanted specific activities. We got them. One thing that, like I said, we really like that site PD, and we hope that the board supports us next year with the same amount of professional development. As you've seen, it's quite useful. So we've done some other things at Ayala maybe a little bit differently. Maybe we're ahead, maybe we're behind. I hope it's the better of the two. We're doing long-term planning in these feedback sessions too at Ayala. We're planning not just, hey, what are we doing this week? What are we doing next week? What are we doing for the rest of the year? How does that look overall? We've started, with Ms. King, collaborative learning rounds like the principals do with our new teachers, and we're hoping to continue that with our departments next year, seeing not just what, okay, we're going to take you to other math department classes, but other English department classes, science department classes, so we can see what those other teachers are doing and gain strategies from them. And some of our teachers are even taking their own steps. Someone mentioned Hattie earlier, and I know that's a big topic in the district, which is great. And we even had a few of our honors and AP teachers take one of the lessons out of the Hattie book, and looking for specific feedback, they created a survey they give to their students every day. Hey, how did this go today? Did you understand what we were doing? Did you do well? And if we could scroll down to the bottom, there's more. There were reasons they did well, reasons they didn't do well, so those teachers could aggregate the data. Hey, here's what we're doing well. Here's how we could improve. So the teachers want more, and we're creating it on our own. They are creating it on their own because they're so awesome. So we do need even more professional development. I am going to pass the microphone, if I could pick it up, back to Mr. Larry Casillas.
As you can see, I'm going to go over the data table just as you've been looking at the data from the previous language, math, etc. But what I want you to notice is the numbers on this data table as compared to the previous two. The numbers are kind of all over the place. It's not really agree and strongly agree. The numbers here, there's 2 points I want you to look at. We got a survey from 58 teachers. From 58 teachers provided feedback on the NGSS implementation, the training basically. And I'd like to point out 2 things. One is strongly agree and agree in general. Address teachers' needs clearly and well organized. And if you look at that, it shows that, well, we did come up with the teachers thought we came up with a well, thought out professional development. And if you look at the numbers right about, I wish I had my pointer, but right up in here, you can kind of see that. But when you look over here, right up in here, you notice that it says teachers are able to implement right away and address teachers' needs. We're kind of lacking in that area. Now, if you calculate the numbers really quick, you can see that almost a third of the teachers that were at those professional developments didn't feel that they could leave that professional development and go and implement it into their classroom. That's 33% of the teachers or the people that went to that professional development. Now, is that something that we want? We need to brush up on that. And I alluded to that earlier in my presentation. 33%, that's not a good number. We want to go up to 100%. We get as close as we can to that. Well, as you can see there, those that did like it, they basically said we learned a lot about phenomena-based instructions and anchoring phenomena versus the hook. We collaborated with other teachers. That seemed to be the biggest thing that they like at this professional development. It wasn't just a bunch of teachers sitting around and being talked to, as Adam had said earlier. It's just they didn't tell me, they got us up moving around. This is what NGSS is. We do that with our students also. Okay. Yeah. And this guy right here, I kind of know him. He's got a flair for cooking. One of the things I like to do in my classroom is I love what I do. And I just try to implement what I do into the classroom. And what NGSS is allowing me to do now is freedom. There was a time, believe it or not, where I didn't like teaching science. I mean, it was just drill, practice, test. Drill, practice, test. And what NGSS has allowed me to do is have freedom in the classroom. If any of you have ever walked into my classroom, I'd like to invite any of you to come into my classroom. Come into my classroom next week. We're finishing a lesson on astronomy. One of the things the students had said, it really got to me today and yesterday, they go, Mr. Casillas, we're finishing the unit on astronomy and we're going into the cooking lab, right? I said, yeah, because they know that every unit that we do, they get to go into the cooking lab. They get to go in there. And I told them, I said, guys, we can't just go in there and start cooking. It has to be related to what we've done. So, you know, that's kind of a lesson there we're doing on bacteria and things like that. But the one we did now, it's astronomy. So how am I going to get the kids into the lab cooking and make it work with astronomy? I said, how many of you have eaten dehydrated foods? And they didn't know what I was talking about. And then I started mentioning ramen and spaghetti and just all the things that you need to reconstitute with water. And I said, we'll start thinking about space and how it works. So, you know, after we get done taking our test, that's the first thing they have to do. They have to develop a breakfast, lunch, or a dinner. And the thing is, I wouldn't have been able to do that without NGSS. Now, the thing is that when I was at these NGSS in-services, one of the things that I've noticed, and some of the feedback, as you saw in the previous slide, is they felt that they weren't able to implement this the next day after they got out of that session. I've been doing this for 30 years. It's easy for me to see the connections everywhere. I have resources in my classroom that I've built up over 30 years. I see something, I'm having to make this. And I've shared with a lot of my colleagues, and I said, this shouldn't be the case. The teachers that we have here should not have to go into the classroom and say, I don't have the materials that I need. I want to go in there and have to make it. If you walk into my classroom, it looks like it's crazy. It looks like an organized chaos because there's things that I have to build. But our teachers in here shouldn't have to go into their garage, bring tools from home. They shouldn't have to build things like that. And that's what we need. So, you know, that 33%, I think we're going to have to invest in that NGSF. If you want to make this thing successful, we're going to have to put some funds into this thing and make it work, especially at the elementary level. And we're going to have to support them a great deal. And that's pretty much, in essence, what's going on here. I'd like to introduce Gabriela Lopez from a moment.
Last but not least, if you take a look at this picture, the guy in the middle, if you don't know him, his name is Professor Ron Malor. He is the world-renowned historian of the Roman Empire from UCLA. He just recently retired, and you'll see him next to our history teachers because we have some of the most renowned historians coming to our history teachers to learn with us about our PD. And we were actually, Chino Valley was cited in the National Historian Scholarly Journal about the professional development because the professors, believe it or not, are learning from our teachers as well. And one of those fantastic teachers, he was a student in our district as well, in this building, I think he shared with me. He's been a teacher with us since 1994, and his children now go to our schools, and his name is Mr. Ian Conacher from Don Lugo.
So as you can see from our numbers here, our numbers are a lot smaller than the English language arts and math and so on. And part of that may be because when it comes to the new state framework, a lot of our history teachers are so lost they couldn't even find their way to professional development. But but in our defense, we're only professionally developing in 2 courses in high school and 2 in the middle school, so our numbers are a bit smaller. 4 years ago, we started this partnership with UCLA because this Common Core was coming out. The history teachers were stumbling, trying to make sense of the Common Core. We were no longer going to be tested by the state. The Common Core only mentioned us as literacy standards. We seemed to be a footnote to English language arts, and we weren't sure exactly where we were going. 4 years of working with the History Geography Project at UCLA and the Graduate School for Education Information Systems, we're beginning to get a sense of what's going on, but there's a lot of confusion that's still out there for us. This year, with the professional development that you see a picture up there, we've been focusing on the shifts that history social science framework is having us go towards, which instead of just teaching the content of memorizing the dates and events and people in history, adding to inquiry, dealing with historical sources as clues for figuring things out instead of just seeing them as facts. Developing literacy standards as part of the Common Core, and then also how do we implement these, the citizenship aspect of this, and how do we apply history to today's issues. From the classroom side of things, you can see up here our statistics. Most of my colleagues reviewed this positively because the framework that we have now goes so far beyond what our existing textbooks and resources have that we're desperate for resources and activities and how to implement these things. It's hard to develop lessons and activities in new directions on top of delivering them and grading student progress and so on. And these workshops are starting to give us tools and direction and the time to make this happen. 4 years ago, I started with the team that was developing inquiry-based lessons and benchmark exams for social studies, and trying on your own to find primary sources on the standards like Aristotle and Plato and these types of things that are usable by all levels of high school sophomores is maddening. And that's stuff that most of us are comfortable with. With the Common Core framework that we have now, they're also asking us to expand the scope of what we're doing, involving every culture and into areas that a lot of us are not experts in, and trying to find resources that are usable and reliable is even more daunting. So the lower numbers, the strongly disagree and disagree, I think are largely from the fact that adapting instruction in this new direction is so daunting. We're so comfortable, as history teachers, we're more comfortable knowing where we've been than where we're going. So change is difficult for most of my colleagues. And so being given something that we can implement right away is difficult when you're looking at all the various ability levels that we have in the classroom and how to put this all in, okay? On top of this, a lot of history teachers have complained about the pull-out time, setting up for substitute, having to catch up, do all of this, and then on top of that going to a day where it seems like everything that you've done for your career may be wrong and you have to start all over is really frustrating. And so it's hard to describe that as meeting teachers' needs. In the next slide, you see the quotes here. You'll notice that on the history and social studies teachers, we don't have multiple responses there. One, we have smaller numbers, and two, we try to teach that history doesn't need to repeat itself. So these are very likely individual responses. People are excited about having a direction in which way to go. One of the things that really is a highlight of it is, as you saw in the first picture, having these college professors from universities around Southern California come and speak to us about the latest scholarship and perspectives on topics in history. A lot of these topics aren't focused on in our textbooks. They weren't in the old standardized tests. They're outside of our individual expertise. And we appreciate this because, one, we're history geeks and we like talking about the stuff and seeing new perspectives. It also helps us expand our perspectives on what we're teaching so we can make connections between events. And lastly, just being starved for resources. We were looking at the textbooks and resources that we were talking earlier, and while we're not at the top of the list, that's okay, because with this new framework, the publishers aren't creating textbooks that meet the needs that our classrooms really need right now. So even if we were adopting books, they're as much a shot in the dark as we were, at this. So it's very difficult. We need them, but I don't see them in existence right now. Since being involved with the curriculum and benchmark writing team and all the professional development opportunities, I'm doing a lot more historical investigation activities and focus on key questions in my class instead of memorizing ancient Greek history and the French Revolution and so on. We're looking at, do people need law and order to have freedom? And looking at sets of laws and different people's ideas about those and getting clues that the kids can establish their own opinions on. And an overall arc to world history is, what is the relationship between between people and their government? And not only today, but differences in different times and places as we study. So we can see that arc as we go throughout history. The partnership with UCLA has opened teachers up to a lot of workshops throughout the LA area at colleges. In fact, one of them that may be held at UCLA is potentially going to be relocated to our PDC next. And I was actually asked by UCLA to join a team on globalizing the Common Core at UCLA, and part of a team of high school teachers and PhDs developing inquiry-based lessons to expand modern Japan and China into our lessons. And so we're trying to finish that up, and the factor there, looking at how was it decided who would be, my project is how was it decided who would be put on war crimes trials after World War II in Japan. Some prominent figures were punished and others were promoted. Okay, so the first prime minister under occupied Japan was the director of occupied Manchuria that the United States decided to promote rather than punish. So these types of things really benefit us. Not only are we not quite stumbling around in the dark, we try to teach the students in our classes to see the big picture, but it was really hard to see the big picture separately and not having a focus on where we were going. Working together, we have a better consensus on what the framework means, how it's being implemented on our sites, in the district, vertically from the middle schools up, and seeing how we all fit into this bigger picture. So collaboration is possible where it wouldn't have been 4 years ago, because we didn't have that, we didn't have a direction to collaborate in. How does it benefit the students? Working with and hearing from current history scholars giving resources is inspiring and eye-opening. As we're shifting our styles of teaching, we get help from those who are writing the materials today, the college professors who are doing the resources, and they have the resources that we may not even known to look for. And how it's affecting the students. The students are about as divided as the teachers. Some are more engaged because they get to interact with the content. It's not as dry and dead as history. But instead, they don't want to memorize it. But others, as the teachers, see it as more work. And why can't we just keep doing it the old way? Okay, so it's a cultural shift that is going through our students and our teachers at the same time. So I'll give this back to Grace.
One of the highlights is also our new teacher PD series that we've started in the district for the past 2 years. New teachers in Chino Valley have an opportunity to learn about the Chino way and get additional support in the areas of emphasis such as the math and SMPs. Today we have the fabulous Stephanette Graham from Cal Aero to share with us her perspective. This is her first year at Cal Aero Preserve Academy.
Good evening, Superintendent Joseph, members of the board. My name is Stephanette Graham, and I've been teaching for about 6 years now. This is my first year at Cal Aero Preserve Academy, and I am loving the new teacher professional development program. As a new teacher, I've been welcomed and supported. I have attended numerous professional development trainings this year that were helped to give me the tools I need to be successful in the classroom, and more importantly, to set the high bar for my students that I have. I would have to say that one of my favorite PDs was a math training. We debriefed about what students are now expected to know for the new Common Core standards. We did things such as number talks and actually playing number sense games such as which one does not belong. I have been implementing this, and I couldn't tell you how long it takes my students. They talk for about 20 minutes about which number does not belong. Hearing them raise their hands and explain their thinking to their peers has been incredible. Students have even said, "Wow, Miss Graham, I'm mind blown. I would have never thought of it that way." One of the things I find most comforting is having an instructional coach like Erin to run to whenever I need anything. She is a wealth of knowledge and will go to great lengths to make sure I have the answers that I need. I hope that one day I'm able to help other new teachers in professional developments that focus on progressing student learning. Thank you. And now I would like to introduce Cynthia.
Good evening. My name is Cynthia Burks, and I've been a CSEA member for 24 years, currently supporting our district in professional development, working with Grace Lee, my director. In professional development, I have a unique opportunity to assist our district with sign-ups and registrations, collecting evaluation results, processing PD requests, and working with budgets and arrangements with logistics. I'd like to thank my fellow members who support PD at our schools, for our teachers assisting with timesheets and securing substitutes. Each day we have a PD, our secretaries at our schools are important to secure substitutes and assist at the sites. Our custodians make sure our PD facilities are clean, and sometimes our nutrition service department assists us in catering our events. Our duplication department aids us tremendously in producing binders and handouts for our in-services. And thanks to our CSEA colleagues in the business department for helping processing the many timesheets and conference requests. This year, a highlight in our PD department, we funded 12 para-educators to attend California Para-Educator Conference in Ontario, California. As a CSEA member, I enjoy supporting PD. A highlight for next year will be that the PD department, in conjunction with the superintendent, Mr. Joseph, deputy superintendent, Dr. Infield, and the assistant superintendent of CIIS offices, Dr. Park, will support training to our CSEA and administrators on providing customer service and building a workplace of mutual respect. We look forward to this great training and team building opportunity for our school sites and district office teams. My colleague Denise Arroyo, who attended a preview of this training, will share what she learned and how it will benefit our CSEA members and administrators.
Thank you. Good evening. I did get to go on to the conference with them last year. It was great. This is a training that we used to have years ago. And I don't know if any of you remember. Were you? None of you were here. Well, anyway, we had this training years ago, and it was provided by the superintendent. The secretaries would go, administrators would go. But these in-service and trainings, it's not to reteach, but to have your clerical and your management hearing the same thing and being on the same page. And we have lost a lot of respect within our work because we are so busy. And it's nothing personal, but we just need to learn to respect one another, no matter if you're a child, a parent, a teacher, the clerical person next to you. We just need to respect everybody's position. But I'm really excited to finally see it come back. So I hope it's going to be great. Thank you.
One of the great things about working with such talented people is they often take the initiative to come and help you out. So when they heard about the new teachers, especially the large amount of new teachers that we're hiring in special education, Brenda Walker, Claudia Cruz, and Wendy Bartman approached us with a collaborative opportunity on how we can provide services to our new special ed teachers in our district.
Hello, good evening. I am here as one of the members of the CVUSD Instructional Leadership Corps team, along with my fellow teachers, Brenda Walker and Wendy Bartman, and also Denise Deloria is part of the team as well. Instructional Leadership Corps is a partnership program funded by California Teachers Association, Stanford University, and the National Board Resource Center. The goal of ILC is to provide teacher-led professional development. ILC's philosophy of allowing teachers to develop the professional development needed for their specific district's needs is what makes it so unique. In the past 2 years, as a team, we developed a plan based on our LCAP for professional development. Our target group was new general education and special education teachers. Our trainings addressed differentiating instruction in the classroom and gave valuable educational resources for new teachers to use in the classroom related to standards-based English and math curriculum. We were able to reach approximately 50 new teachers. We provided them with networking opportunities with both seasoned and new teachers, taught them effective classroom techniques and strategies, and gave them resources to take back to their classrooms. As an ILC team, our hope is that new CVUSD teachers feel supported, gain the skills and experience needed to stay in the profession, and continue to work in our district. The ILC team looks forward to continuing our work in partnership with our district to provide professional development that meets all our teachers' needs. Thank you. And I also have some brochures that give a little more information about ILC, so I will pass that out at the end. Thank you very much.
Good evening. I'm Gabriela Lopez. I'm the principal of Ramona Junior High, and I'm glad to be a part of the district's PD committee. So in summation for lessons learned, what we've gathered is, and I know that you've heard from all of the representatives, is that the lessons that we've learned is that collaboration is the key to success. I know that you've heard from many different voices and perspectives, but it is a reflection of how in CVUSD our teachers work collaboratively as a system in order to provide for the needs of our students as well as for our teachers throughout the entire district. Research has stated that collaboration and effective PD is what is most important, and that is so clear in our district. By collaborating, we mean that we are collaborating on building the content base for our teachers, collaborating on how we will deliver the PD for our teachers, and then we ensure the collaboration among the teachers on how that will be presented to our students. Because oftentimes, as teachers, they are just the one person in the classroom. We need to be able to provide that time that is needed for colleagues to share with each other on what best practices are and how we can introduce that to our students. Second, PD should be at the district and also at the site level. As you heard from some of our colleagues, when they receive the PD at the district level, then they return to the site and they get it also at the site level. The PD at the district level is to build that common understanding of the language of the areas of emphasis that have been put together by our Teaching and Learning Task Force. For example, at the district level, we learn about Shift 3, which is our new ELA shift that we are implementing this year, the SMPs, and also NGSS, which we heard from Larry Casillas about, and the history implementation. At the site, we need to also provide and build in the time for our departments to work together, for our grade levels to work together, and cross-curricularly for how we can deliver again to our students. As our district is using collaboration and hearing feedback from the collective teachers, as you saw from all of our surveys, I wanted to be an instructional leader that also gathered feedback from the teachers at my site. So we created a feedback form. This is mine. So this is a feedback form that we implement after every PD at Ramona Junior High, and this is some of the feedback that we've heard from the teachers at Ramona. So we asked the question, was today's meeting useful for you, and did we meet your time use the time effectively? Have we done a good job in actually completing the task that's been at hand? Do you feel that the task that we completed has helped you in planning for the next steps? So for this PD, the feedback that I received from teachers, the PD that we introduced was actually on Hattie's styles of feedback. So you can see that most of our teachers feel that we used our time effectively. Some teachers responded as somewhat, and a couple of teachers responded as no. So you know, as board and cabinet members are very well versed in the different voices that we hear and the opinions that our community needs. Sometimes we have to be able to relate to all of our stakeholders as teachers, make sure that our system is providing that professional development that applies to all of the teachers, but at the same time for the individual needs of the teachers that are implementing on our school sites. I wanted to share with you some of the feedback again, because we allow for teachers to provide comments on what next steps should look like. So I was very excited about this PD in particular, because the majority of our teachers felt that, much like you heard from other colleagues, this was the best one so far. I loved the information today. I realize now with looking at PD, I can be more aware of the types of feedback that I'm using in class. It didn't really occur to me that even the feedback should be individualized by student. Again, so with collaborations learned, the experience with my staff, and now and I know that I collaborate with other site administrators, that it's important that we provide that feedback opportunity to our teachers. And as a system, we have various PD needs in our standards. Our system has the challenge to meet the diverse needs of all of the teachers with very limited days and time, and also provide the time at our school sites. This is an important and enduring goal for all of the voices. Often we hear very divergent opinions, which is not necessarily a bad thing. We need to be able to step up to this challenge, and it's an important challenge so that we can bring a cohesive presentation to our community. One important piece is that when I get that PD as a site administrator, we get that opportunity, as teachers have shared, it's embedded into how will we introduce this to our sites? How will we bring it back to our sites? And we do get that opportunity to work together as junior high principals to implement this best, and specifically for the different site needs. As you know, all the sites have different needs, and our students have different needs. We need to make sure that we collaborate, but we're still presenting it systematically, but we're also individualizing it to every one of our sites. Again, we're seeking that support from the end users and including that two-way collaboration. So even at the site level, we're asking our teachers, how do they feel about the presentation? Is it worth the time? Is it something that you can bring to your students? And what should our next steps be? And with that, I will end with a quote from Helen Keller. Alone, we can do so little, and together, we can do so much.
Thank you, Ms. Gabriela. Finally, for our next steps, we wanted to share with the board our next steps for next year, and also know that some of the comments that you've heard, our path might not be so direct, but we are committed to working as a collaborative group. First, you've heard from testimonials from this really passionate group about the very divergent and different needs for the area of emphasis. So based on the areas that are strong, we are going to provide more support for the areas that we would need in some of the data that you heard. And the way that we want to provide support is actually through the best resources in our district is through our people, through collaboration. Mr. Kelly Larnett are going to talk about the 3 specific areas that we came up with in our teaching and learning task force.
So the good news is, this is our last slide. The bad news is it's going to take me 20 minutes to get through it. No, as we face next steps, we're going to embrace collaboration. And that is one of our 4 C's, collaboration. It's one of our areas of emphasis. But honestly, it extends beyond that because as a representative, not the representative, he's sitting over there, but as a representative for ACT, collaboration is a big thing between the teachers and the district office. And I think that we've made huge strides this year, and I'm very encouraged by the direction that things have taken. 2 areas that we will be continuing to collaborate on are the collaborative learning rounds and the PLC process. And that is 2 areas in particular that the district and the association have worked closely at hand with. I've had the opportunity and the privilege to be invited by Dr. Enfield several years ago when we started the collaborative learning rounds process. And I'll be honest, after 19 years of teaching, that has been one of my favorite things that I have done. To be able to get into the classrooms of other teachers, my colleagues, to see the great things that they're doing in a positive light, to focus on what students are doing, not what the teacher is doing, and to learn and to take in the great stuff that's happening in our classrooms at CVUSD. And so we're going to continue those collaborative learning rounds. They are going to break out into the schools where teachers, groups of teachers will get together and walk around and learn from their colleagues. We are also moving in the right direction with PLCs. We've sent a couple teams through the district office and ACT to get training on professional learning communities through Solutions Tree and really start to focus on what do students need to learn? How do we know once they've learned it? What do we do if they haven't learned it? And what do we do for those kids that have learned it and are ready to move on or to enrich? And so we're going to bring that to the PLC process and really start to turn some things around. You also were, it was also mentioned about the customer service and the building a workplace of mutual respect training that's coming. We also are going to continue as a teaching and learning task force and a professional development committee, look at how we can support areas of low implementation, things where maybe our areas of emphasis or other avenues are not hitting where we want to hit, and then continue to develop and communicate and gather feedback. That's been one of the themes of our areas of emphasis. And at the end of the day, we're looking at how assessing the student learning that's going on. Because again, if you go back to that pyramid, that upside down pyramid, it starts with students being the priority. So how are they doing, and how is all of these resources that we're putting into that affecting our students? Thank you very much.
Are there any comments from board members? No lights? Am I on? Did you? Mr. Na, I don't have your light, but I see that you want.
Should go first.
No,
Mr.
go ahead.
Orozco goes first.
I'm still writing my notes.
Oh, you are? Yeah. I have no notes, so let me go first. Yeah. Collaboration. What a great thing. Yes, we have a limited time and limited resources, but let's focus on limited time. We wear different hats, our teachers and our staffs and all of us. At home, we're fathers and mothers, and at other junctions, we're friends to others. So I think it is so important that that daily we're thinking and growing, especially a profession where we're impacting our future, our young generation. And let's look at the collaboration. It means that I'll be working, I'll be running so hard, and I'll be sweating. I've been running full 45 minutes, but in my hindsight, I see a man just leaning against a post, drinking water. And I'll be saying, wow, what he's doing, and look at me. But then somebody tells me, but we need that man. He's our goalie in our soccer team. So let's look at positive things, and let's promote our talents, because we have so many. And I'm so happy to see that it's working for the last 4 years. We have a wonderful teacher there in the back. She leads the club on campus and making great impact. I'm so proud of our teachers. Could you come and then introduce yourself too? I know you might do a presentation, but yes. Because she has started as a brand new teacher, newbie, years back, and all of us have grown. From first-year teachers to Mr. Casillas, now his daughter is getting married. Awesome, awesome. Awesome things are happening, but collaborations and mutual respect, that is very important. That's where the kids going to learn to respect others, respect our elders, respecting their parents, and respecting our country. So could you please introduce yourself?
Well, good evening.
Yes.
My name is Isela Vasquez. I'm a teacher here at Ramona Junior High School, and actually I'm proud to say that I'm homegrown. I grew up in Chino, and I went through the elementary schools in Chino, through Magdalene Junior High. I graduated from Chino High School, and I started with the district as, my journey started as an instructional aide at Don Lugo High School in 1994. So that's where my journey with education started, and my love for education began. And I've stayed here, and I started teaching in 2004. I was at Buena Vista for 5 years. And then I had the privilege of opening Calero Preserve Academy, and I'm now currently at Ramona Junior High School teaching 8th grade language arts, and it's just a privilege and an honor to be here, so thank you.
Thank you. You guys are awesome. Thank you.
Mrs. Roscoe.
Okay, so my comments are probably going to be all over the place because as you were all talking, I'm typing notes and whatnot. So as the beginning started, I kept hearing feedback, teamwork, input, participation, and then I did the little equal signs to collaboration. And then I started hearing the word collaboration at the end of the presentation, and you're absolutely correct. Having that collaboration is what's going to make us successful. Someone said the Chino way, and I love that idea of the Chino way, but we need to exemplify the unified in the Chino Valley Unified way. Another thing is that the pyramid, so I've always advocated for putting children first, and I'm so excited to see that that's exactly what we're doing, because when we put kids first, everything else falls into place. And so, let's see, what else do I have here? Customer service training, yay. I know I've talked about it at a couple different meetings, but what you don't know is that all the different times that I've talked to Mr. Joseph about it. So I'm excited to see that we're gonna have that. I do have a couple of questions though. Is that I heard need more professional development, and I heard the word invest, that we need to invest. So when you say invest, do we need to invest in more professional development, or do we need to invest in resources or material, or what is it that we need to, or more?
Larry who said that.
Larry, sorry Larry. Hate to put you on the spot, but because I think that if we're going to ask our staff and our teachers to invest the time to do all this, then we need to make sure that they all have the tools to do it correctly. And so I'm curious as to what it was that you were asking that we need.
A little bit of both, because I think you alluded to it too, or a couple of them alluded to it too. Chino has a wealth of...
So everybody can hear you.
Chino has a wealth of experienced teachers in this district, and I know that when people come popping into my classroom, they're coming in there because they want to see what's going on. And I can go into somebody else's classroom, pop into theirs, and see what's going on. We're sharing resources with each other. I know the schools that feed into Townsend Glenmead, et cetera, we've already reached out to them and had them sit in on our PLCs. We've done some vertical articulation, and they've sat in on our PLCs and listened to what we've done at Townsend. And we were doing that before the district decided to have the elementaries this past month come up and start getting trained in NGSS. So we were already doing that because we knew that's what we needed, and we just started doing that. The collaboration, again, vertical, et cetera. Now, also resources. They said, well, this is great, fine and dandy, we're learning about this, but we don't have the resources you do at this junior high. I'm in an elementary setting. How am I going to do this? Well, okay, so we started, loaning things out. I can go down there, I can show you how to set this up, that type of thing. You can use this, you can go to Home Depot, do that, this, that, and the other. But the thing is, they were going to do that. They shouldn't have to do that.
Okay.
When they saw what I had in my classroom, I said, I have 30 years of stuff there. I know how to do this. As a first, second, fifth year science teacher or somebody in the elementary, they shouldn't have to do that. They shouldn't have to. So it's actual tangible things that they need,
Okay.
and they need people like me, Kelly, and the other science teachers in this room to go down and show them physically how to do this. I'd be more than willing to go down to a junior high school, show them physically how to do this type of thing. That's what they basically need. They need that time. They need time to work with us.
Okay.
That type of stuff.
Okay,
good.
thank you. Like I said, I think that if we're going to put so much effort into a project, that we need to make sure that the team has the resources that they need to perform the project to its fulfillment.
I'm going to piggyback on what you said. In June, the site PD funds are sunsetting out, and that has been, I think, the biggest help for our school and just for the different schools. So maintaining that site PD money and allowing the teachers the opportunity to meet together and to do that vertical alignment has been really, really beneficial, and I think needs to continue.
So now we need to figure out how to keep the pot full.
Bake sale.
Car wash. Well, thank you guys all for all the effort and all the input that you all have shared with us. Like I said, it's heartwarming to hear that we're going to do the Chino way, because there are so many districts that do it their way, and I'm just excited to hear that we're doing it our way now, and we're doing it the Chino way. And I'm a product of Chino also, so it's even more heartwarming.
Mr. Cruz.
Yes, Mr. Casillas, you guys have like binders of lesson plans that you guys created where you could give it to the new people? I'm just curious.
Yes and no. Okay, we share a lot of digital files with each other, but that would be my files that I have that I will share with the people at my site and people that I know at other sites who I've come in contact with, that type of thing. Just through networking, we have a in-services here, and the networking we do at our latest in-services, they'll see I did a presentation at one of our PDs about that science of cooking class that I did, and just from that, I had people start contacting me. See, so those are the type of things that we need, have our own people put on our own in-services, and then we become a resource. That's right. That type of thing.
No, I can remember.
But I can put those things together. I have my own stuff, and I do share it, and we all share it.
Well, that's great. That's great. Thank you. Yeah, real quick. Mine, the underlining theme of this presentation, you had a lot of self-reflection, collaboration, and feedback. But, one big part, you could feel it, it was this, together we could do so much. And you had that humanity of this thoughtfulness, respect, because you have to encompass all this fairness and kindness towards people, because people are very different, how they view things and so forth. So that I noticed that it was a very, when it comes to the collaboration part, reflection, all this stuff that you guys were doing, there was that sensitivity about people, because people are so different. And also, I also noticed this, and that is, the 2017, 2018, 2018, and 2019, where you had ELA 1, 2, I do notice that some of those are going over 2019, and I suspect because obviously the first year, you only could go so far. The following year, you go even deeper. But at the same time, you got that wide overwhelmed teachers. Allow them to do what they did for that year and then progress further. And then also, you notice a lot of this was relied on teacher input. It had been the case. The surveys, And when you have half of the teachers doing the surveys, and it's been already 4 years, you notice that there's this listening. So there's this positiveness occurring because one presenter mentioned about the emotional ebb and flow. You could lose teachers if they're not being heard. So there is that part of success where things are moving forward, and I suspect that that survey, more teachers are going to join in the bandwagon. So that is excellent. And also, yeah, and you really think about it, that emotional ebb and flow, that is so important to listen. So thank you.
Mr. Na, another comment?
Yes, still focus on Mr. Casillas' class, because I've been to your classroom, and I loved it. And kids loved your teaching method there. But as time and resources which we have limited, I'm wondering if we can work with our technology department and make it in a more accessible form for all the teachers who could not attend, and all the time and continuously, where we can use our instructional coaches or our volunteer teachers and have it in a computer system or somewhere, and only our staffs could go through that and remind themselves, because like I'm over 50, I don't know what happened 2 weeks ago, and I'm sure many teachers are like that too. I think that would benefit many people, because we can do so many of a PD year, but I think it would be a great idea, because I'm so amazed at what I have here today and watching what you guys doing, and I think we should be able to do that. Mr. Joseph? Okay, thank you.
Mrs. Hur, you wanted to speak.
I wanted to answer Mrs. Orozco and Mr. Cruz's question about what do you mean about resources. So from the elementary perspective, NGSS, the new Next Generation Science Standards, are new, and they've been adopted, but there's no curriculum to go with them yet. So next year should start the process of curriculum being looked at by the state and then being adopted, so we can't purchase anything yet. So what we have are all the standards online and the framework, which gives you great ideas for creating models and for doing experiments and having the kids create things, which is part of NGSS. They're actually working with it. And so I think what teachers are saying, for us to even play with it this year, we have to go out and buy things for the kids to use to make models and that. And I can let you know some sites, including mine, are looking at creating a science lab where we pull everything that the school owns from past curriculum, bring it together in one room, put tables in there, and let students and teachers come in and do their lab work in there, because the junior highs have the lab. That's a resource they have. We don't have science labs. So we have to look ahead to the future. And then just to piggyback on that, everything that was taught in the past curriculum has changed. So NGSS has said, okay, grade level, you're not teaching rocks or solar system this year, you're teaching the body. And it all spirals up to another grade level, so it gets taught. It's just that everything we had is now not applicable to the current science standards. Does that help?
Yes,
okay.
it does.
Mr. Cruz.
You want to go?
No,
No, it would just be great, Mr. Joseph, if there was a place where there was curriculum binders. You know, like what you just meant, like Mr. Castillo mentioned about his projects and so forth. You know, when I was a biologist, that was a problem with, you know, teachers in general, what to do next, obviously. But if there was a binder of all sorts of things, then the teacher just goes and buys it. I mean, that's what I did. But that's the key, if there was setups like that, and then young teachers just run after that.
Okay, Mr. Joseph.
Well, I know when I look at some of the people who've been involved in this process, Mr. Larned, Mr. Casillas, Mrs. Bartman, Mrs. Hur, Mrs. Mounts, some of these people I know well. I know it's going to be thorough, it's going to be substantive. But I want to give a little thanks as well to some of the people who made this happen. Grace Lee, as the Director of Professional Development. I know it's not easy to put this kind of thing together, so we thank you. And although he began the presentation by saying on behalf of Mr. Joseph, Dr. Enfield was being very humble and magnanimous, because he knows and I know that he came to me 4 years ago when he first became deputy with this vision and brainchild of having a teaching and learning task force. It's been his baby, and it's happened because of him. And he should get all the credit, not Mr. Joseph. So I thank you, Dr. Uncle. However, when you're thinking about inviting me back to the district at some point, you don't have to invite me back to presentations that are more than an hour and a half long. Okay? Just pass on that. Okay. Thank you.
All right, and the final presentation is Dr. Park.
We'll just jump right in. Good evening, Madam President, board members, Mr. Joseph, cabinet, audience.
I'm going to do double duty. I apologize. If you can hit that power button.
I'm joined tonight by our coordinator of secondary curriculum. My name is Julian Rodriguez, director of secondary curriculum. I'm joined tonight by our coordinator of secondary curriculum, Dr. Michelle Eckersall. And then we have 3 teachers from our ELA, ELD, 7th and 8th grade adoption committee joining us. You met one tonight, Isela Vasquez from Ramona. We also have Michael Nieblas and then Katie Koopman, who's going to be joining us also. So we'll go ahead and jump right into this as soon as this starts up. So ELA, ELD, English Language Arts / English Language Development Instructional Materials Program for grades 7 and 8. And our little agenda tonight is to provide you a background of the ELA, ELD Adoption and Pilot Committee. I want to give you a summary of the pilot process that we've just, that we're wrapping up. Talk a little bit about how we evaluated the programs, and then talk about a recommendation from the committee. Okay. So first, a little bit of background. If you recall, in 2014, the State Board of Education adopted a new framework, not the new standards, but a new framework for English Language Arts. Now, the framework broke new ground in that what it attempted to do was take the new English Language Development standards along with the Common Core standards and integrate the two. So because we know that language as well as literacy is a part of learning all of the content areas, the fact that we're now integrating them was an important and a groundbreaking concept. And so the model that we most closely associate it with, and we've shared this model with you before, we affectionately call it the turtle, but it talks about all of those elements of English language development standards along with ELA standards, and them coming together to really create a learning experience that will support all learners in trying to access the content, and that's the important part here. So any program that we look at needs to push those two together, needs to integrate those two together. So as you know, for the past 4 years, we've had our units of study, 4 to 5 years, units of study that have been created in-house, and they've done a tremendous job bridging that gap. But what we know is that in 2015, the California State Board of Education adopted a number of ELA/ELD programs for school districts to look at, and for grades K through 8, okay? And so the ELA/ELD framework document called out specific requirements that publishers and or districts had to address in the creation of any new program. And so I'm going to refer to this a couple of different times. It's specifically Chapter 12 in the framework that calls out what these programs need to have in order for us to consider them sufficient instructional materials. And so after the state adoption was released in 2015, the CIIS here in Chino Valley, we had an important decision to make. So we had 3 options. We could overlook the adoption process and remain with our ELA/ELD units of study. Okay, we could eventually adopt those. They would still have to meet the criteria that's required by the state, but we could do that. We could immediately commence with an adoption process in 2015. We could immediately commence with an adoption process and attempt to choose a program, or option number 3, we could continue to work with our ELA, ELD units of study, refine those as needed, and then learn more about the programs that were available and eventually make a much more informed decision. So what we decided to do was go with option number 3, which was to continue to work with our units of study, refine them as needed, and then eventually make a more informed decision. So we started to prepare for that process. Curriculum, both secondary and elementary curriculum, started attending some of the publisher fairs, looking at the materials, reviewing materials. And in addition to that, we continued to refine our units of study. So, oh, I just went through all of that. Sorry about that. So I'm going to have Dr. Eckersall come up and talk a little bit about the committee work, okay? Because now we got to 2017, and we decided that this was the point that we were going to follow option number 3, which was to start looking at some of the materials.
Good evening. So last spring, we had our units of study writers evaluate the units that they had created, and what we had found is that they were fairly strong, but there were still some holes. And based on that, we needed to look at more materials, more resources that would better suit our needs. So September of this year, we enlisted the help of principals and department chairs to recommend volunteers or to ask others to volunteer their time to be a part of this process. We also consulted with the association to make sure that anything that we are putting in place is sanctioned and would be met with positively. We also sent out an invitation to the 7th and 8th grade unit writers because there was a wealth of knowledge in those two groups because they were trained specifically in Chapter 12 requirements. On October 5th, we started the process with the committee here in the boardroom. In total, we had 19 teachers participate. Within those teachers, we had units of study writers, both in 7th and 8th grade. We had 3 ELD teachers. We had 2 special ed teachers. And we had teachers that range from honors, traditional, special ed, and ELD teaching. In addition, also in attendance, would be 2 ELD coaches to serve as advisory. 1 technology trainer, because the technology trainers would be there to support with an adoption as well as during the piloting process. And as I stated, we had the range of student abilities represented there. Once we had our committee review Chapter 12 requirements, we went into the reviewing of the publisher materials. The piloting, started on November 1st, and we had 1,569 students affected by the pilot. Okay, so that's a large representation of our clientele. The 19 classrooms, I'm sorry, I went too far. Sorry, Sala. Okay. Based on the California State Board of Education guidelines for piloting publisher materials, we looked at multiple tools that could be used to evaluate the programs. In the tools that were reviewed, there were 5 components that were essential to evaluate. Category 1 was the ELA, ELD standards and framework alignment, and this is to ensure a high quality instructional material. Category 2 was program organization, and this is to ensure there is enough content and support for a full year of instruction with the materials. Assessments, to monitor student progress along the way. Universal access, and this included differentiation based on the needs of our students. And then category 5 was instructional planning and teacher support to ensure students are comfortable with the materials and able to use the platform that's before them. 3 publishers were invited to present to the team. After each of the presentations, the piloting teachers filled out a preliminary evaluation form based on these 5 components. And at the end of the day, they tallied their votes, and based on the votes, it was clear that there were 2 publishers that were being requested for evaluation through piloting process. And at this time, I'll be turning it over to Isela Vasquez.
Thank you. As I mentioned before, I teach 8th grade language arts. I teach at Ramona Junior High School. I've taught there for 8 years. I teach gay honors as well as a traditional 8th grade language arts. At Ramona, I've also had the privilege of teaching 7th grade at one point and ELD. And throughout my time there, I have participated and privileged to be part of the RCD process. So it sort of gave me a different lens for this entire process. So as Michelle mentioned, the piloting process took place over between November the 1st, 2017 to February the 23rd, 2018. And approximately 1,500 students were able to use the new adoption, and they were able to interact with the programs we piloted. To support the 19 teachers in their classrooms, we also invited other support staff to the team, which were instructional coaches, special education teachers, ELD teachers, ELD coaches, and technology training specialists. And as well as we had several days to support us. We had 3 days. We had a couple days for pilot training. There was also an ELD support day. And then they had great reps that came out to speak to us individually, so that was wonderful. They came out to speak to us one-on-one as well as to speak to us as a department. Here we have a classroom. Dr. Eggersall went around to each of the school sites, and she was able to see and to glean how the program was being used. So here you see pictures of students that are interacting with the text. And here's a picture of my classroom. Some of the things that I can mention that I like about collections is that there is a rich text. I see that they have a rigorous text set, which is not only full text study, but also, what's the word I'm looking for? The excerpts. So what I like is that they have the full text study, but then they also have a close reader book, which is there pictured, where they can go back and interact with the close reader book so that they can practice their annotation and close reading skills. So you could see sometimes it can become overwhelming for them to do it for an entire text, so I like that it has that close reader book. And then the students are always able to go back and interact individually as well as with their groups. So those are some things that I personally liked about the programs that we piloted. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Katie Kootman. I teach 7th grade English, Read 180, and I'm our newcomer class at Ramona Junior High School. I come also with a different lens. This is my first year in Chino Valley, so I had not taught the units that we had. So going into this adoption, I actually asked to be a part of it so I could represent our newcomer group, because though it's not our biggest group, they're very important, and we are asked to teach them the core curriculum. So I wanted to see, what do these programs offer for them? Speaking of newcomers, both programs piloted had really strong newcomer programs, but this program that the California Collections offers wonderful, wonderful vocabulary, especially in the beginning of the year. I've probably had 6 or 7 students come and go in that newcomer class, and this program offers support at all levels. So I can have students that come in 6 months into the year, I can have students that come in 2 weeks into the year, or ones that start with me, and I can individualize kind of, okay, you have this vocabulary, we're going to start you here. You know, it really offered great support for that, whereas before you kind of have to pull from 900 different places. This program has it all there for us. Another thing I really, really liked for this program with our newcomers is the close reader that Ms. Vasquez mentioned. It had, for example, we did Christmas Carol with a newcomer class. You can imagine what a challenge that would be. I have students who are here 3 weeks. I have students who have been here all year. It offered excerpts of the play, the novel, and a graphic novel for the students. And I did all 3 with them. And of course, we started with the more challenging, and then we worked our way down. And they got it, and they enjoyed it. And they would come to class, are we going to read more today? Are we going to do more with that today? And for that, that excited me as a teacher, because these students, they work hard. So to see them enjoying such a rich classic text was so awesome. And this program had a lot to support it. That close reader really breaks it down. It has them close reading the text, annotating, analyzing in chunked ways that we really are pushing with Common Core, as well as, with those ELD standards as well. And then there was really a lot of resources. Being an ELD teacher, you kind of look at a text in a different light when you're going to teach it. You want to see, you look at those struggle points. Okay, what graphic organizers can I use for this? How can I support the writing? How can I frame it? And this program offered so many resources that, just like the other teachers talked about with Wonders, that initially it's like, oh my gosh, there's so much, but there's so much that we can teach every single student. We can meet every single student's need. You're no longer having to, go online and try to figure out, oh, this kid's at this level. It offers all of that support for those levels, which I thought was really important. Going into this process, I kind of had an idea of which program I enjoyed and preferred, but at the end of the day, after going through these steps and collaborating at the ELD PLC with just ELD teachers and going through the evaluation tool, I saw things, some of my beliefs and feelings were confirmed, but others were changed. And it was such a valuable process to see, okay, this is where we're going, this is what it has, and to really feel like we're walking away with a really strong program for not just our English language arts class, but for the ELD classes as well. So.
Good evening. Excuse me. Good evening. My name is Michael Niablis. I teach at Cal Aero, 7th grade and 8th grade, GATE honors as well as standard track. I also teach theater, headed up the first junior high Shakespeare club, poetry club, literature club, and I'm also involved on campus with our Safe School ambassadors. And I had the benefit of helping to pilot this, and what I'd like to talk about is the opportunity for a new historic approach to literature and how that goes directly hand in hand with what we are trying to teach as far as the mission statement of the school district itself. Our idea of moving into the 21st century and creating 21st century critical thinkers, the new historic approach to literature that is being very, 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 very popularized in a lot of campuses is looking at literature not just through the lens of a piece of writing, but looking at it as a representation of culture, art, politics, economy, and the people that the literature comes from. So you don't just read a text like Anne Frank and look at it as a typical Bildungsroman coming-of-age story, but you actually supplement it with actual writings from Germany, looking at things like propaganda, looking at what is going on in film, art, movements. And what was really amazing about this piloting is that it offered all of that within the text because it partners with history and biography. You had the opportunity to supplement in additional resources through the text itself. Like my colleague said, you're not stuck going online and finding it, but instead you could create an entire protocol where your students were being given documentaries on world politics in Germany, Amsterdam, the Netherlands, leading up to reading the Diary of Anne Frank. So it was a really, really wonderful way where we're bringing about more critical thinking that reached across the curriculum. The other thing that it offered was, for me personally, I don't feel that there's any curriculum or type of reading that really brings about critical thought as much as poetry. A lot of the previous curriculum was very light on the poetry. This is somewhat light, but it does still offer a lot of freedom for teachers to be able to bring in classic works of poetry, such as Invictus or Dylan Thomas's Do Not Go Gently Into That Good Night. So you can actually bring in aspects of character and correspond it with poetry to get the students thinking critically and then responding online, making them better thinkers. Thank you.
So our piloting period ended on February 28th, and that's when we called all of the teachers back together. And we assembled them, and we really wanted to create a day, and this is the process that Mrs. Koopman talked about. We really wanted to create a day where we could offer, we kept referring to it as a catharsis, really, because you go after this night, you have these weeks of training, and then you are piloting the materials, and sometimes that happens, and you try not to happen in isolation, so you want to pull the teachers together to discuss, but at the same time, you want to respect the process that everybody's going to go through. So we brought the teachers back together on the 28th, and we created a process by which they could spend some time listing some strengths, talking about concerns, and then bouncing ideas off of each other to address them, because maybe I didn't have an opportunity to really delve into the assessment pieces or the formative assessment pieces, but maybe Michelle did, so she came in and we had an opportunity to do that. We facilitated that conversation with those support teachers also. And so at the end of the day, it was, but not before we send them to lunch, because that was also an important part of the day for them to have a full hour to have a lunch, and then come back and provide an opportunity to, again, just get everything out in the open and discuss it. And so then we asked our teachers to make a decision, and we provided them an opportunity for a confidential vote, because we wanted to protect the integrity of the process. It was a confidential vote. And we took the same exact approach that we used when we went through the elementary adoption process. We asked the exact same questions. And what we did is we lined up all of the, and for the process, we put the units of study up there. It was from day one, we said the units of study have been here for, for this long, so we're going to hold them up against the same publisher's criteria that everything else is going to. And so we asked them to indicate a degree of support for each one of the publishers. So as you can see here, I strongly agree with the program. I agree with the program. I have concerns, or I abstain because I don't know enough about the program. And at the end of the day, the results were, as you can see, we had a lot of strong support in favor of the programs, but the overwhelming was for California Collections at 83.3%. That could definitely support an adoption of the program, and we're willing to support an adoption of the program. So the next step is, upon board approval, reconvene the adoption committee for some what we would call launch recommendations. And that's a pretty complicated process. Doesn't happen in a week. It doesn't happen in one training. It will take some time. So we're going to have to map that out. And I want to continue with the adoption committee. They were incredibly helpful. Pull them together, again, with the help of the support teachers, as well as the other departments. Plan professional learning on the new program, and then debrief the entire process for recommendations on when we have to do this again.
Any questions from the board? Mr. Na.
Just a comment. This is an amazing process that you had adopted, especially the piloting program, having kids try hands-on, and this is awesome. So thank you, and kudos for your department, and awesome teachers. Yeah, our first year, and from our aide, and yeah, this is great. Things are happening, and our Chino Valley Unified was continue to grow because of your hard work. Thank you, teachers. Thank you.
Mrs. Roscoe.
Well, I just want to say thank you for the presentation, but more importantly, I think that some exciting things are going on in Chino Valley, and it's exciting to see everything come together, and the collaboration not only in the first presentation, but here and the input that's being given. So just want to thank you all for the great job that you guys are all doing. We've got superstars in our district.
Mr. Cruz.
Yeah, so, when it comes to our ELA, I mean, obviously, they're missing academic language and prior experiences. You mentioned the closed readers that made me think. These closed readers, they're picking things, and then they're researching of what they're looking for, these words, and you're guiding them of the direction that that you want them to go to?
No, so the close reader is a consumable book, and
Yeah.
so what it does is it has the text, an excerpt, and you read it once, you do the first read, the lines are all numbered, the paragraphs are numbered, and then it asks the students questions in the margins, underline. So sometimes it's vocabulary, and you have to define it in context, which is a huge SBAC skill that our students struggle with. So that means you don't go to the dictionary and you look it up. You have to look at how it's being used in the text and try to figure out what that word means. Again, our English learners, this is a really, really tough skill, very tough skill. And so the close reader guides them through it. And then they will take chunks of even that excerpt, and they have to really analyze it, close read. What is the author trying to convey? What is the author's purpose? How does this character's actions impact the plot of the story? And it's really forcing them, the students, to do the heavy lifting of that, critical analysis of the text. And the close reader guides them step by step. So after a chunk, they have to answer a short answer question. That kind of helps them to reflect back on that process they just went through. Then it takes them to the next step. So it's a very scaffolded process for them. It's not just, here's this hard text, tell me what it says.
And the end result is a writing piece.
They always, yes, the end
So
result
this
is always
the,
writing.
This is the basic foundation of creating a piece of work.
So the collections program, the way that when we piloted it, they do smaller chunked activities throughout the actual textbook. The close reader is meant as not quite an assessment, but it's going to take it to another level. Then they do the writing. So they've done some writing, then they're going to get to the close reader, and now they're really, really going to have a more challenging text. You're still guiding them through it, and then they have the writing piece. So the end goal is, yes, writing.
And they're learning academic language.
Always.
And then they're learning this context, which is prior learning experience.
Right.
It's English, obviously. They need to learn the lingo of English.
Yeah.
That's very good. I like that.
Mr. Joseph.
Yes, I have a question, Mr. Rodriguez, and the gentleman behind you. Golly, I haven't heard Dylan Thomas's name since I was in graduate school. It was 30 years ago. And yeah.
I think it's on a commercial right now, too.
Oh, is it? Rage at the dying of the light?
Yeah, do not go gentle to that good night.
Well, right. Well, my question has to do with, old timers like I am who used to teach English, and there was a literary canon that, a group of works that you had, and now it's a little different. Will you talk about that just a little bit?
I'll talk a little bit about the, along with the actual program. What's really neat about adoptions nowadays is they're so customizable. So we're actually going to be able to go to the sites and have them choose which novels they want adopted as part of the program. In addition to that, the resources, and I'll have Michael speak to a little bit more, but with technology, the resources are endless in terms of not only the actual text, but the excerpts that we can use to supplement the text are just endless. You want to talk a little bit about the selections that you have?
Yeah, absolutely. So for the pilot unit that I chose, it was Anne Frank, and it was the idea of the world at war, but also there was a lot of emphasis on the nature of art that came about it. And there was sections that I could choose from, like Hemingway's A Movable Feast. And so the main text would be the Diary of Anne Frank, a dramatization of it. Then we read that. They have guided small group discussions, and we focus just on character. Then from that, there are suggestions of, at this point, the teacher can bring in something or this or that. My choice was to bring in poetry. And so in the discussion of character, for example, Mr. Frank, he's the backbone. And so I brought in On Sunday Mornings, a poem about the austere nature of love. And then when we were looking at Anne Frank, in particular, the interaction between she and Peter, and because they are teenagers and they're reading about the flirtation and things like that, I brought in Walt Whitman's Song of Myself. And so they're reading those as supplementary minor texts while they're reading the actual text. And all I'm doing is giving them the additional poem. They're then discussing it. That turns into a group discussion, turns into a class discussion. Then after we finish the play, they get the close reader, which has additional bits of everything from, excuse me, I'm sorry, I talk all day, gets additional bits that are like Invictus, or you can even have them research additional poetry, like slam poetry or things like that. But that is a genuine plethora. But the beauty of it is for the students that have never seen poetry before, they have no idea who Ginsberg is. Because it's through history and bio, I can go through those resources and assign to my students this documentary, 3-minute long documentary on Ginsberg, on Beat Generation, so that they can come in already front loaded with, okay, this is what it was. This was a 3-minute thing that I watched on my phone. Now I'm ready to talk about it.
Mr. Cruz.
I want to be in your class. You know, that's collection, right? So every school site can choose their own novels.
We have a couple of different options there. We're
Very
logisticizing
nice.
that right now. We're trying to figure out what the best approach to that one is. That is one option, but yes.
That's exciting. I like it.
All right. No further questions? Hearing no further questions? We are now at comments from our student representative.
Good evening. So the Student Advisory Council met Tuesday, March 13th, and the students were able to communicate with the Director of Nutrition Services. And what they were able to discover was most of the concerns that they had voiced and relayed to me to voice to the school board most of the issues have been alleviated. And also the students were able to talk about school site safety with the Director of Risk Management and Superintendent Wayne Joseph. And also the students again discovered that most of their concerns are being worked on and implemented into a lot of the programs that the board is working on. And after the board meeting, I saw a lot of the students were eager to get in contact with me, and they're excited to get their voices heard through me on the school board. So I'm still waiting on some emails. I know a lot of them told me, or they came up to me and asked for my email address. And I'm also working on expanding my contact information, just in case those students don't know how to reach out to me. And I was also encouraged by President Fikes to share my experience with Chino Hills High School dance team and all-male dance team. We just had nationals in Florida, and the dance team and the all-male dance team placed first in every category that they danced in. Thank you. And on top of that, the all-male dance team, we scored the highest out of 61 hip-hop teams from all across the nation.
Wow.
And that concludes my comments.
Could I interrupt and say, Mrs. Kaler, if we have any time on a student showcase, maybe we could invite them if we have any time left between now and graduation day.
And also video, too. Yeah. We can watch them.
Yes. We are now at comments from employee representatives. Danny Hernandez, CSEA. No. Yvette Farley, not in the audience. Are you speaking tonight, Tom, for her? Yes, I am. Okay, come on up. Or come on down. No, I didn't.
I just have a couple, I think I have 4 comments that Yvette asked me to make. First of all, we want to thank you, President Fikes, for attending CHAMP's Restorative Justice speaker last week, and there were about 40 CHAMP members who came, and so we really appreciate your being able to make it. Secondly, there's CHAMP for all the CHAMP members, the scholarship for college for all CHAMP members' children or grandchildren is available now, and so that's going on. Third, we have CHAMP is sponsoring a Angel Game Social on 4/21, which is a Saturday, so anybody can go to that. Contact Ryan Candelaria at Newman for tickets. And finally, Wednesday went really well, I think, for our district and across the nation, but especially for our district. So I wanted to extend our thanks to all administrators for making the walkout day for students a positive and very safe experience for all of them. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Steve Ball, ACT.
Yeah.
Community Liaisons, is Paul Rodriguez here? No? Mike Krieger? No, and I saw Melissa Campani was here, but she gave up the ghost. Okay, so comments from the audience on items not on the agenda. We're now at comments from the audience on items not on the agenda. Pat, are there any requests to speak on non-agenda items?
We have 9 requests to speak on non-agenda items.
Great. Speakers, you will be called in the order the request was received. Please listen for your name and be prepared to approach the podium. Any comments on agenda items will be accepted during consideration of that item. Once the board has commenced deliberations on an issue, speaker cards will not be accepted. The board is very interested in your comments, but please bear in mind that the board typically does not respond to comments during this time on the agenda, as it is reserved specifically for public comments. Individual members may respond during board comments at the end. Mr. Na, would you explain the light system?
Speakers, you have 3 minutes to make your comments. Please begin your comments at the green light. The yellow light indicates you have 30 seconds. The red light indicates your time is over. And before you begin your comments, please adjust the microphone. And audience members, please refrain from making comments while speakers are at the podium.
Speakers, please remember that in accordance with Board Bylaw 9323 Bylaws of the Board Meeting Conduct, limit remarks to 3 minutes total for all remarks. And please limit remarks to new points. The board would like to remind you that there is an existing board policy 1312.1 for anyone who wishes to file a complaint against a district employee. The first speaker is Ray G., followed by Victoria Lacaro, followed by Meg Garrison.
Okay, hi guys. This is my first meeting, so I don't really know how this is gonna go, but I'm just gonna talk about some stuff. That's cool. Okay, so basically I came here to talk about all of like the safe school things that need to be done, all the shooter stuff that's going on right now, because I'm a student of Ayala High School and I'm a senior, and we've only had one lockdown drill, and that was the first one. I think it was like last week or 2 weeks ago. And we just got an action plan, and I just want to know what's going to like happen with that, because I don't know. A lot of kids in my school are really worried and stuff because like we don't really know what to do. So if something were to happen, we wouldn't know how to handle the situation. We just hope for more lockdown drills and more school safety, and talking a lot about like action plans and what to do. That's basically it.
Thank you.
Victoria Lacaro, followed by Meg Garrison, followed by Maria Garcia and Rosa Sanchez. Victoria Lacaro?
No.
Oh, she doesn't want to. Meg Garrison?
Okay, good evening, everyone. It's past my bedtime, so my name is Meg Garrison, and I'm a second grade teacher at Cattle Elementary School. I've been in the district for 26 years. I'd like to share with you about my day today. This morning at 8:15, I was told that I'd be getting some third graders in my class because we didn't have enough subs. There was a district teacher training day today. This has happened before, by the way. The last time was a few months ago when I got 8 first graders in my class. I had my second grade students give up their seats at their desks to go sit at the back table for the entire day. 8 second graders around the kidney table with all their books and supplies is no fun. Today, the administrator divided all this third grade class up amongst 7 classes. I only got 3 third graders today, but here is my concern. The third graders came with busy work. Our district core values, I've been reading this over and over tonight, state we provide excellent service to all students. I believe we missed the mark today, and it's happened many times. I went into the third grade classroom today after school, and I grabbed the lesson plans that the teacher had left. There's 4 pages of typed lesson plans here. This is so sad because this was not followed today. How much time, thought, and energy was spent leaving those plans? What important lessons did not get taught today? Tomorrow is my training day. It's Friday tomorrow. I imagine we will run into the same problem with a shortage of subs. I have decided that I will not be attending the training. It breaks my heart. It's on science. I got excited listening to the science teacher. I will miss tomorrow. I do not want my kids to be divided up and my well-thought-out instructional plan not executed. We need to put students first. That's another thing I heard tonight. We need more reliable subs. My colleague had her sub lined up 3 weeks ago. Today she checked, the sub dropped. Do we need to pay the subs more? Do our trainings need to be done before the school year starts? I believe that I'm speaking for all teachers with this concern. I care, and guys, I'm speaking from my heart right now. I care very deeply about my students. You know me, Mr. Na, you know me. I care very deeply. Let's put students first and make them our top priority. Another thing I heard tonight, and fix the substitute situation. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for coming.
Victoria Gamma and Rosa Sanchez, followed by Veronica Nunez, followed by Charles Chamorro.
Good evening, Board Meetings and Superintendent Joseph. My name is Maria Gama, and I'm here with another parents from my neighborhood to discuss a concern for our children who attend to school in Chino Valley Unified District. I live in Chino Hills, and I also pay taxes in Chino Hills. And I'm shopping Chino Hills, so I ask you, why do my children have to attend to a school in Chino? Our home is located in the 8th H on Chino Hills in the mobile homes park of Chino Hills Parkway and Monte Vista. My children are currently attending to Battlefield Ranch School on a transfer, but our home school is Doris Dixon in the far side of Chino. My son was at a waiting list transfer on Townsend, but my husband and I were informed that Townsend is not taking transfer. We want to know why our families are forced to send our children to schools across town of Chino when we have schools near homes in Chino Hills. Other communities near to Mobile Homes Park, where we live in Chino Hills, attend schools in their own communities. And we feel like we are being discriminated against because we are lower income and living in a mobile home park. We are concerned about many aspects, as sending our children to school so far from our homes, the longer bus ride to and from school, and uprooting our children to unfamiliar places and have to make new friends. I'm aware that as a parents, we have the right to ask for a transfer to send our children to another school with a school district if our home school is program improvement school. At this time, I'm exercising my rights to request this transfer for our kids to attend to Townsend instead of Ramona Junior High and to Chino Hills High. Thank you for your time and concern.
Thank you.
Veronica Nunez, followed by Charles Chamorro, followed by Peter Atwood.
Mic red already? Good evening. My name is Veronica Nunez, and I teach fourth grade at Howard Cattle Elementary School. And I'm here tonight again to speak to you about the lack of substitutes. Students should have a right to be educated regardless if their teacher is attending a training or not. No substitute often means that students are doing busy work, as my colleague mentioned, which means no learning is going on that day. All students need to be safe, even if there is no substitute assigned to their class. Often the class is dispersed to other classes because of a lack of substitutes. What if an emergency arises? How does a parent know where their child is? Failure is not an option for CVUSD students. We owe them a competent teacher every single day. When teachers are out, students often waste a day of learning when no substitute shows up to teach their class. Every classroom teacher plans for an absence. Trainings are meant to teach us various new concepts. If we need to be called back from the training, not allowed to attend, or attend a random training, teachers are not learning either. I implore you to do all that you can to fix this important issue for teachers and students in Chino Valley Unified School District. Thank you.
Thank you.
Charles Chamorro, followed by Peter Atwood, followed by Nancy Bunker.
Good evening, everyone. It's my first time here, and I really enjoyed the presentation, and thank you for the hard work and foresight of our superintendents and our teachers. And I apologize in advance in case anyone gets offended, but I'm just here to voice out my objection to the walkout that was organized and supported by the district. And because I believe that our students should be in the schools to learn, and these extraneous matters, which should be done outside of school hours, should be interferes with their learning. And also, I don't want my child or the children in general to grow up in an environment where if something bad happens, we dwell on it and we allocate time to whine about it pointlessly. And it can also be construed that we might be forcing an agenda on them, a political agenda, and which I don't want people to say the district is doing that. So thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Peter Atwood, followed by Nancy Bunker, followed by the final speaker, Elena Lacaro.
Well, it's only got 3 minutes, so I'll get there quickly. I was going to speak about special education and also the religious stance which the board takes and how these relate. And I came in here today and I found in closed session that you spent 15 minutes talking with counsel about the freedom from religion case for 15 minutes. I've still been noodling with that for a long time, several $100,000 down the road. And also you got a special education case coming up in which you're fighting with the students. So I saw you guys aren't allowed to preach and read the Bible, so I'm going to do a little for you. Matthew chapter 18, verse 6. How this relates to special education goes like this. Whoever causes one of these little ones who believe in me to sin, it would be better for him if a millstone were hung around his neck and he were drowned in the depths of the sea. Now, how does that relate in the case of special ed? Well, in Newtown School District in Connecticut, they paid no attention to the needs of Adam Lanza from second grade up. And eventually things went the way they were, and he went and shot 20 people at the Sandy Hook School. That happened, as the Connecticut Child Advocate said, because the Newtown School District behaved in his case the same way that the Chino Valley Unified School District behaves with its special education kids, doing the same thing. I had an IP meeting today. We need to send you the recording of the meeting, and you'll see what it's like when they systematically and intentionally make sure that the kid doesn't get what he needs for no good reason. Which takes me to Isaiah chapter 32, which reads like this. Here he says, the heart of the the foolish person will speak foolishness, and his heart will work iniquity to practice ungodliness, to utter error against the Lord, to keep the hungry unsatisfied, and he will cause the drink of the thirsty to fail. That's foolishness. It's also ungodliness. It's speaking against God, you, Mr. Na, you, Mr. Cruz, to condone the deliberate depriving of the needs of these kids, the least among you, you may figure, but Jesus had something to say about that too. And the reason I bring this up is, if you guys didn't claim to believe in Jesus, it would be out of place to say anything about that here. But you guys do. You spend hundreds of thousands of dollars wanting to preach.
Thank you.
Okay?
Nancy Bunker, followed by Elena Lacaro. Nancy Bunker. Elena Lacaro.
Happy New Year. I haven't seen you for 3 months. So I've been meaning to get here, so I really want to just talk to you. I brought my daughter today. She was Victoria Lecaro. You called her in, but when she realized all the people were here, she just got very shy and didn't want to come up here. So I told her, okay, your job will be just to give them this flyer. Every day I walk with my daughter to Rhodes Elementary. I live 1 block away from Rhodes Elementary, yet I always have other kids with her because I walk them to school. I'm here to address a safety issue concerning the lack of a walkway to the entrance of Rhodes Elementary. Students, parents, and community members are forced daily to walk across the parking lot filled by moving cars, at times dodging between the carpool lane just to get across to get to the main entrance. And I've given you some of the pictures. This safety issue inadvertently was caused because one of the main gates where students used to come in and exit was closed permanently. I was told it was because we were out of compliance. There was no walkway from that park. There's a park where that entrance was. They didn't have a pathway, so it was closed, which made us, at the beginning of the school year, a lot of us, many kids, had to walk through the parking lot just to get to the entrance because everything was closed, especially the ones that lived in that neighborhood, which is many of times my daughter, myself, and all the kids who saw me walking, they kind of come with me and I walk them into school. Well, this safety issue has caused many of us to be very, very concerned because we're dodging between these cars. I brought this attention to the district, and I also brought it to Ms. Dr. Freed, and they tried to help us by putting those cones, as you could see there, and we're walking through them, but many distracted drivers sometimes swerve into those cones, and I desperately fear that one of these times, one of these kids are going to get hit. Sometimes kindergarten children who are in the morning, they have to walk through those carpool. So we've been dealing with this issue, and safety issue, since the beginning of the school year. I was told that once they talk to the city and the city approves, they're going to open a pathway that allows us to cut into the park, into the school, where they put in walking. They already put in that accessibility for children to walk. However, I was told that that was not going to happen until they finish the portable project, which are the classrooms that they just put in. We waited. I thought that was going to be done before January, before the winter break. Now I was told that we have to wait more because they have to put the solar panels in the playground. It's almost a year. The school is almost done. And I'm sure that I misunderstood the whole thing, or information is getting to me wrong. I know, because I know that the personnel really cares about our school safety. But it's almost a year. And I'm seeing these kids on a daily basis walking through this parking lot, through the carpool lane, and we could have a very serious accident safety issues any moment.
Thank you.
Thank you.
No further speakers.
We are now at changes and deletions. Pat, are there any changes or deletions?
The following changes are on the agenda. CIIS item 3C2, page 43 is yellow sheeted, and facilities planning and operations item 3D2, page 48 is yellow sheeted.
Thank you. We are now at tonight's only action item. Pat?
Item 2A1, Richard Gerd Educational Hall of Fame 2018 inductees.
Recommend the Board of Education approve the Richard Gerd Educational Hall of Fame 2018 inductees as follows. Alumni recipients, Diana Taurasi and Jonathan Monroe, and employee recipients, Glenna Ramsey and Corey Acosta. Are there any speakers?
One request to speak. One request.
Okay. So and who is that?
Do you want to do the speakers first?
Well, don't we do the speakers first?
David Robles. Don.
Okay.
You left?
May I have a motion?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Comments, questions, or discussion?
I'm excited to see another Hall of Fame inductee.
No other comments? Then all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Preferential vote? Aye. Motion passes with a vote of 4-0. Next item.
Item 2B1, 2017-2018, second interim financial report.
Recommend the Board of Education approve the 2017-2018 second interim financial report and authorize the President of the Board of Education and the Superintendent to sign the positive certification of financial conditions for the current and 2 subsequent fiscal years. Are there any speakers?
There are no speakers.
May I have a motion?
So moved.
It's been moved and seconded. Are there any comments, questions, or discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Preferential? Motion passes with a vote of 4-0. Thank you. Next item.
Item 2C1, public hearing to receive community input on the proposed request to name the Don Lugo High School varsity baseball field after Joe Marcos.
Recommend the Board of Education conduct a public hearing to receive community input on the proposed request to name the Don Lugo High School varsity baseball field after Joe Marcos. I now open the public hearing at 9:44 p.m. Do we have any speakers?
He didn't give me a speaker card, but.
We had a few. They left because it's late, but I can speak on behalf if that's okay. Okay. Please.
Go ahead.
My dad, Joe Marcos, he served the community of Chino for 42 years, and he was the head coach at Don Lugo High School for 31 years. I'll make this short. I've been here before. I do have a couple bullet points here. I apologize. We did have speakers here, and it is late. It's past my bedtime as well. But you guys know my dad. Everyone here knows my dad. We thank you so much. Just real quick, Coach Marcos began as assistant coach at Don Lugo High School when the school opened in 1974. The field was in need of some love, so he really worked on the field and built a program there. And over the years, maintained the field, and eventually the wins came, and he got over 500 wins, and he was one of the most winning coaches. Multiple players went on to play professional baseball, collegiate sports, collegiate baseball. But most importantly, he nurtured a community of young men who grew and developed, and family members have come back and really enjoyed his leadership. And we recognize his leadership, and we would appreciate honoring him in the naming of the field, dedicating to him. So our plan is, I have a plaque that can go behind home plate, no cost to the district. It comes right out of my pocket. We would put that right behind home plate. It would honor him, and the details are all worked out as far as that goes. But I apologize for me being the only person to speak here on behalf of my dad, a good man.
Nothing to apologize
All
for.
right.
Yeah.
Thank you guys very much.
Thank you.
I now close the public hearing at 9:46.
Item 2D1, Resolution 2017-2018, Notice of Layoff of Certain Classified Staff Pursuant to Education Code 45117 and 45298.
Recommend the Board of Education adopt Resolution 2017-2018-46, notice of layoff of certain classified staff pursuant to Education Code 45117 and 45298. Are there any speakers?
No speakers.
May I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. Any comments, questions, or discussion? All in favor?
Oh,
I'm sorry.
Oh, sorry. Dr. Anfield, these are, what kind of programs are they? Are they,
These are classified positions, instructional aid, special education, instructional aid, bilingual, biliterate Spanish, and bilingual typist clerk.
and where do they get their money from?
Title I funds,
And that varies, right? And is that based on site council?
correct. It's lack of funds or lack of work.
So depending on the site council, they could eliminate it because they may not have funding.
Correct,
So this is
and/or the school site council may have,
Other priorities?
correct.
Okay, thank you.
Any other comments, questions, or discussion?
I do.
Hearing none, all in favor? Oh, wait, I'm sorry, Mr. Na.
Yeah, I just ask Leah again. So depends on their budget. They could be placed in another position. Depends on the
Correct.
site. Yes,
So the district works with CSCA collaboratively regarding the effects of the layoff. And at this time, we do have other positions that we will be offering these employees.
Great. Thank you.
Any other comments, questions, or discussion? I see no lights. Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Preferential? The motion passes with a vote of 4-0. We are now at consent. Pat, are there any speakers on consent items?
None.
Board members, do you have any polls? Mrs. Orozco?
None.
Mr. Cruz? Mr. Na?
I have none.
And I have none. For the remainder, for the consent items, may I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Mr. Roscoe, thank you. The motion, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Preferential? The motion passes with a vote of 4-0. We are now at information items. Are there any questions or comments? Hearing none, we are now at board member and superintendent communications. Mrs. Orozco.
Well, I'm going to keep it short. All I'm going to do is announce the retirements in this evening's board agenda. First one, in all number of years. Mavie Keene, 20 years of service, elementary teacher, Chaparral. Michael Kopecki, 18 years of service, science teacher, Chino Hills High School. Denise Wetzel, 25 years of service, science teacher, Chino Hills High School. Glenn Wetzel, 17 years of service, science teacher, Chino Hills High School. Tina Coughlin, 32 years of service, school secretary, Chino High School. Joe Stephen Martinez, 18 years of service, custodian specialist at Don Lugo High School. And Margaret Martinez, 22 years of service, administrative secretary, special ed. Congratulations to all of you, and thank you for your service. And that will conclude my comments.
Thank you, Mr. Cruz.
Yeah, mine's gonna be very brief too. Yesterday, they had the school safety meeting at Chino High School. I have to say that the Alice video and the next day video were very powerful. I think one thing, Mr. Joseph, we should perhaps do is maybe have more of a discussion, a dialogue with the parents and with the leaders. And also, one more thing, I think to have respect for the students. A lot of students emailed us about how we could make our schools safe. So I'm just going to read some of the things that they would like to see. One, Sophia stated, integrate a magnetic strip into the ID card, installing swipes for classroom doors. Dimitri, we have too many gates. Brady, have people who have just finished boot camp and waiting for deployment should serve at least a year as a security guard at their local school. And more cameras. Teddy, have armed security guards. Alexis, mandatory group intervention for students who frequently get suspended detentions. So very thoughtful things how to keep our schools safe. Thank you.
Mr. Na.
Yeah, I went to Briggs Fundamental School, and was able to attend Measure G meeting, where we had many teachers and principal attending. And there were concerns and all the requests for this exciting new plan for new school. Basically, we're doing lots of things there. But I was amazed that all the questions they have asked, those are about the kids. We need to have enough room for this many students. We need to have a storage place for our PE equipments for both girls and boys. I was amazed that how much our teachers really care about our students first. And so then I said, but what about our staffs and teachers lounge? So that was my suggestion, that we make a real nice place for our teachers and staffs to, with this remodelization. And I'd like to ask Mr. Joseph, I think, as our speakers have said, the roads, sidewalk, that's a very important safety issue. I'd like to have our staffs go there and see if we can find remedies in a very short time manner.
Yeah, I noticed Mr. Statura went out with the parent
Great.
and talked to her.
And we still have and also a parent here, and she's really concerned with her child going to a school that's really far from where she lives, and if we can assist her anyway, her concern. I think it's about the safety too. So let's see if we can have our staff meet with her. I think she's still in the audience. And I'd like to this time thank Mr. Atwood. She's been 10 years serving our special ed students, and you were always straight. I'd like to also ask if we can see our director meet with Mr. Atwood and resolve his concern. He's been the same, and he'll be same for next 10 years. So thank you, Mr. Atwood, for your service for our special ed population. Thank you. I'm done with my comments. Thank you.
Mr. Joseph.
In the interest of time, I won't have any comments tonight.
I also had lengthy comments tonight, and I'm going to hold them till the next meeting. I'm going to say, I'm the mother of the bride on Saturday. So somebody said, you look kind of tired. Yeah. But I did want to say quickly that I met with 4 government classes. After we got a bunch of letters from students at Ayala, I met with 4 government classes on Monday all morning and listened to students. I've been a little bit distressed to hear some news stations cast students as like the pawns of the Democratic Party. I think the student activism that has sprung from this is spectacular. I think our students feel very empowered. And I echo Mr. Mackessy's comments about Wednesday. What occurred on our campuses was intentional and had great meaning for the students who participated in it. I can tell you that the students I listened to at Ayala on Monday had wonderful ideas with great thought and totally understanding the complexity. It's not just enough to say, raise the gun aid. It's not just enough to install metal detectors. It's not just enough to put extra officers on our campus. I'm really, as your board president, I'm not interested in the perception of safety. I'm interested in there being safety. And we have to look at this nuanced problem from several lenses. So I will share with you, I have a little article I wanted to read, but not tonight. With that, I conclude the board meeting.